yesterday as we had insightful discussion on CQ, which focused on the importance of CQ in the viewpoint of the scholars from the educational society. And a quick recap of what we've discussed yesterday about CQ, yeah? The ability of oneself to exhibit their CQ to make them able to relate to the beliefs of others and have to respect it. Yeah, CQ is only not culture. Yeah, I mean CQ is not only culture, but rather a way of life for people to live harmoniously. We also was highlighted on the need to balance the human beings with the nature. Balancing these two elements is the key components in shared human heritage. This is, as far as I'm concerned, mentioned by Tan Sri Rector, that goes beyond various cultures. And taking the situation of the pandemic, well, it is, we take it on the positive side of it. Yeah, when the world is practicing the same SOP, and that shows that no nation or culture is above than other. I mean, above the other. Yeah, and we need each other to live peacefully. And CQ is, last but not least, CQ is a tacit knowledge that the best way to master it is through experiential learning, as one may read as much as he wants, but nothing beats being there experience at the moment, or the life experience, or what we call it, the the life experience of the culture itself. So, ladies and gentlemen, for the knowledge we gained yesterday, we should thank not only IIUM for organizing this webinar, but also ACAT, that all the way support us in making this webinar a reality. We thank ACAP for the good job they have done, and we are proud to announce that ACAP has received the most outstanding award recognition through International Invention and Innovation Competition, INCC #1 Series 1 2021 yesterday. Congratulations ACAP on the continuous improvement. Thank you. So congratulations ACAP on the continuous improvement effort in developing a profiling system for talent management in higher education institution, UNILIT, and now recognized by the industry in facing the Industry 4.0 challenges. All right, ladies and gentlemen, enough said. Let us now move on to our agenda today. We are going to have another 2 forums before a presentation of a resolution by the Director General of the Ministry of Higher Education. Now, let's not waste any more time. We will start with our first forum for today, and the moderator for the forum is none other but the team leader for CQ in IIUM, Associate Professor Dr. Faiza Idrus from the Kuliah of Education, IIUM Malaysia. Dr. Faiza will moderate the forum entitled Global Citizenship, Internationalization and Cultural Intelligence. Before I pass the platform to her, allow me to read brief biodata of Dr. Faiza, very, very brief. Associate Professor Dr. Faiza Idrus is currently the Deputy Dean, Students Development and Community Engagement, Kuliah of Education, IIUM. She is the team leader for this webinar, and needless to say, her interests include cultural intelligence. Apart from that, her research revolves around education, social linguistics, and teaching and learning. Ladies and gentlemen, Associate Professor Dr. Faiza Idrus, over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Madam Sharizan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak, and we have Puan Sri also with us this morning. Honorable guests, distinguished speakers, moderators, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of our forum today, and we have 3 distinguished speakers and learned speakers, I would say, and they are, okay, so let me, because this is how probably we want the session to be. I'm going to give about 20 minutes for each speaker to speak, and we will put the question and answer right at the end. I think that will be okay, yeah? So that we can have a full 20 minutes for each speaker to speak. Okay, so I will start with Wesa Chow. I will read Wesa's, a little bit of Wesa's biography. Wesa is the CEO of Cultural Intelligence and passionate about helping organizations harness the power of cultural diversity. Her career experience ranges from working with migrants, international students, and refugees through the media and communication for diverse audiences, advocacy for multiculturalism, and research on diversity and leadership. She was the founder of the Australian Federation of International Students in 2002 and grew the organization to service 8,000 students during her tenure. Her role was instrumental in helping to establish the International Student Care Service, predecessor to Study Melbourne. She has also held a senior manager position in the disability sector. Wesa has received several awards for her contribution in the multicultural and international students areas. In 2016, she was awarded the prestigious Victorian International Education Internationalization Award in recognition of her work with international students for more than a decade. In 2013, she was the Australian Leadership Award recipient from ADC Forum and named Young Victorian of the Year 2010. In 2006, she received the Victorian Multicultural Commission's Award for Excellence in Service Delivery to Multicultural Victoria. Wesa also received the inaugural Scanlon Swinburne Intercultural Fellowship and traveled to India and Malaysia to work with academic and government officials to better understand cultural diversity, diaspora, and alumni networks in India and Malaysia. Tertiary education encompasses engineering, marketing, law, management, and governance. That's very impressive. She is the current PhD candidate researching political science. With that, Wesa, to you now.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this wonderful conference. And I might start off with actually challenging the discussion around, particularly around cultural intelligence, because I don't necessarily think that cultural intelligence it's always about harmonious societies, in the sense that I think it's really about how we manage those differences, and sometimes there may be conflicts. So when I talk about cultural intelligence, I don't necessarily say it's all going to be well and good. Sometimes there'll be conflicts, but it's really about how we manage these conflicts to be able to create a scenario where we can resolve differences. And so that's kind of my approach to cultural differences, and not being afraid to having those differences as well. And I do think it's quite timely to talk about cultural intelligence at this time, because our communication with people from different cultures have just become increasingly difficult. And that's because the nation borders are shut, and therefore we have to rely on technology and virtual meetings to communicate. And we know how difficult this could be. Even with people who we have known for a long time, as soon as we start to put things online, on Zoom meetings, it becomes quite difficult, and we have to manage things quite differently. We can't talk on top of each other. We have to allow each other to finish their speech before we can actually discuss the topic. And even though the the description of the session said that it's virtually borderless, and it's true, but it's also at the same time the physical borders are shut. When we start to move everything online, and people just assume that we can put everything on Zoom, and obviously, as we've all discovered, this is not necessarily the case. People can zone out because they've Zoomed for too long. As much as we like to engage and be interactive, it can be quite difficult to engage people. We've had quite a few lockdowns in Melbourne, and I've been speaking to quite a lot of academics who've been asked to basically move everything online, and it's been really difficult for many of these academics because they want to engage with their students, but then at the same time many of them tend to keep their videos off. And I've organized sessions myself online, and despite how many times facilitators encourage people to show their faces, people still prefer to hide. Which means that we can't see each other's reactions, we can't see people's faces, and it's difficult enough to read people's faces from a different culture when we see people face to face. On the virtual space, it's even harder. And it's even harder if we can't see people's faces as well, and that they're from different cultural backgrounds. Because silence, as we know in cultural intelligence, where silence can mean many different things. And it's become more and more challenging for leaders to read what those silence actually mean, because it can mean very different things to many different people. And on top of that, we also need to be mindful of messages we talk about online. Different countries also understand these things quite differently. And for me, when I traveled to Malaysia and India to understand intercultural harmony and strategies by different governments to bring groups together, the way we talk about this topic do differ quite significantly. So the terms people use are also very different. In Australia, we have more than 200 different cultures living together, and our discussion is really about who was here first. So the Indigenous people, and then you might have people who would argue who built the nation. But obviously, discussions like this in India would be fruitless because of the historic wars between different cultures, different religions, groups, and then on top of that, you've got the caste system as well. So the discussion around race and culture and religion can be quite different. And of course, in Malaysia, the three main cultural groups: the Malays, Chinese, Indians. And the discussion is always about creating harmony between these groups. And so what this means is when I'm invited to speak at conferences like this, I need to be aware before my presentation that my messages are relevant. In the past, I used to be able to arrive in Malaysia, get a feel for the place, experience the place, and even on my way to hotels or conference centers, you get some time to actually be familiar with the location and to be familiar with their culture as well. Now, that doesn't exist on the virtual space. And therefore, it becomes much more challenging for people, including leaders who might be traveling to a different location to meet his or her team, but they don't really get the opportunity to feel the local offices, the local environment, and really have to rely on the imagination. And hopefully they've actually been to the location, which means that they can reflect back on what it was like. But that's not necessarily easy as well. I've spent about 2 years before COVID with other intercultural consultants, and we developed a program for virtually virtual culturally diverse teams, and it became very, very relevant when COVID started, because obviously more people move their teams online, and at the same time they still need to be able to communicate with other team members. And we found that when we were developing the program, that the current programs on cultural intelligence can be quite limited when we can't see people, when we have to move everything to a screen. For example, even if we have to drive to learn about different cultures, and let's face it, when you're not within the country to experience it, it's really difficult to imagine it. It is also difficult to learn things and pick up what you don't know as well. So in the past, when you're actually in the country, you might see things that are different, you might ask the question. But then if you're not actually on the ground, it makes that very difficult. And you might not even know to actually ask the question. And another example, you might use a certain term, and the term might be understood quite differently in another country. In Australia, we use a lot of slang, and sometimes, even though I don't tend to use slang, but there are slang that is so common that I don't even know that I would be using it. So words such as cuppa, for example, or having a cup of coffee or tea, when we're in the same space, you can pick these words up easily, especially if people look very confused, then you realize, oh, actually, I might need to explain what I just said. But when you don't see people's faces, or when you're not in the same space, it's much more difficult, and you might just get just silence, and people just don't understand what you're just talking about. And words can also be interpreted differently as well. And when we were developing that particular program, we discovered that active listening is not enough anymore for virtual multicultural teams. You need to actively ask clarifying questions in order for people to understand where you're coming from, but also to see whether or not the messages that you were sending is actually received. So obviously the process takes a bit longer, and it's more responsibility for leaders to be thinking about this. But at the same time, these exercises also bring the team together. There's more opportunities for teams to actually share what they know and what they think. And happy to go into a bit more detail if people are interested, but we can leave that to the Q&A session as well. To adapt cultural understanding to all these changing circumstances will require more people to be more flexible. And that's my approach to cultural understanding and cultural intelligence, and recently developed a cultural competency assessment tool to help individuals and teams to understand their own flexibility or inflexibility, and how that might impact on their work against global teams or multicultural teams. It focuses less on traditional cultures because as we know as well, young people see culture quite differently, and those who might have lived overseas or studied overseas would have adapted other cultural practices. And hence, moving forward for cultural understanding, it's less about the Chinese culture or the Malay culture or the Indian culture. It is how much you can work across all these cultures. That matters a lot more. And as you will all be aware as well, for example, Chinese Malaysians would be very different from Chinese mainland from mainland China, and obviously in Australia as well, Chinese Australians are very different from Chinese from mainland China. So it is difficult to say just because you're Chinese, therefore you have certain practices as well. So in order to work with people who are now very mixed and very global, we have to understand culture in a different sense and understand how flexible people are to be able to work across different cultures. And of course, there's no right and wrong on culture. If people are inflexible, it just means that they are it's much harder for them to work in different cultures. In my own example, I'm not very emotionally expressive, and also more inflexible in that particular dimension. So what that really means is, if I'm working in a culture where people are emotionally expressive, such as Latin America, so if I decide that I will move there, it'll be much more difficult for me. So I can adapt to it, but it'll be very draining, it'll be very challenging, and I probably need to have very good support systems in place, such as good partners, good family, to enable me to adapt to a situation like this. Whereas if I move to Malaysia, for example, that would be a breeze. I can fit right in because the emotional expression can be quite similar. But at the same time, I can be very flexible in other dimensions, such as communication style. So even though I might be more indirect in my natural approach, if I decide to move to Germany, and German tends to have a very direct approach to communication, I can adapt quite easily, and in many ways enjoy to try something different and be able to communicate in a much more direct way. So the tool that I've developed look at different dimensions, including the cultural, the contextual differences, communication, as we talked about, relationship building, and also resilience. And I only talked about communication here. Again, if people want to know a bit more, happy to answer them in the Q&A as well. So from my perspective, it's really about self-awareness and how to apply this in different contexts that will enable us to be more culturally intelligent, and to be able to work in many different cultural contexts, and also in multicultural teams that might be based in the same country. So understanding the flexibility help people to develop the skills to manage these differences. Like I said, it's not necessarily about everybody being happy, but to be able to manage the conflicts, and to find resolution to some of these differences. And people might decide that they wanted to change, but obviously that would take a lot longer as well. And I will stop it here, and happy to take any more questions in the Q&A.
Thank you, Wesa. Yes, we do have quite a number of questions for you already coming in, but I'll start that at the end of the session, when all the three presenters have presented. And now I would like to move on to our second speaker. Our second speaker is Janet Pillay. Janet Pillay was a senior lecturer at the School of Arts, University of Science Malaysia, Penang. Besides formal teaching at the university, Janet led Artist Ed, an organization specializing in heritage education, research and publication for the community. Arts Ed also specializes in program development and training in non-formal arts education. Her research interests include topics such as cultural sustainability, role of the arts in heritage conservation, and pedagogical approaches to art education. Janet is a researcher, practitioner, and activist in the field of arts and culture education, creative pedagogy, cultural research, and community outreach. She contributes as an expert resource person with the Education Training Unit at UNESCO Bangkok and UPCU Korea, and has authored numerous articles. articles. Janet is the author of Community-Based Arts and Culture Education, a resource kit which is intended for artists, educators, and organizations interested in using creative approaches to working with or for local communities. It is the cumulative outcome of arts ads, 12 years of work in arts and culture education. It outlines methodology and case studies of how community-based programs with young people can provide an alternative creative learning platform and help safeguard environment, social and economic assets of the community. And I will start with Janet with a question, Janet. How do you think cultural intelligence would be accepted by fellow Malaysians? And what are some of the factors that could interfere with the implementation of CQ in the education system? To you now, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this seminar. I'm going to share screen. Can you see my screen? Hello?
Can you see?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, to answer your question regarding how Malaysians would, and also higher institutions of learning would take on this notion of cultural intelligence, I think actually Malaysia should be at the forefront of this, because we really have exhausted the whole discussion on multiculturalism, and we have so much experience in multiculturalism. I feel, having worked with a lot of young people, that we are really moving towards exploring intercultural and transcultural relations in Malaysia. And I feel that we have a really good grounding for these kind of experiments and research in this area, particularly with younger people, but framed by our multicultural history. So I think that actually it has a lot of room for serious practical experiences, laboratory type experiences, as well as academic research. So having answered that question, let me go on to what I want to present today, which is, my area, which is intercultural education. But today I'm going to speak more about intercultural education for global citizenship. And I want to start by saying that my inclination is towards leading students and even practitioners from interdisciplinary sort of settings to actually take on lived experiences as a kind of a laboratory preparation for global citizenship. And I feel that the embodied experience of working on a project, on a project which is set in an intercultural setting, is the fastest way to develop cultural intelligence, or to combine it with academic or theoretical understanding of the subject. So firstly, I would like to lead us to rethink the term culture, because we tend to recognize culture more from its outcomes as manifested in tangible and intangible constructs, which we see in the physical, social, and livelihood dimensions of our lives. But actually, culture also has another very important facet, which is it is an adaptive force. And in reality, it is a very creative and transformative force. So exposure to new environments, as was mentioned by Wesa earlier, new circumstances, even new technology, as we are doing now, lead us to adapt and to exchange and to fuse or change our worldviews and our ways of thinking and doing. So we have witnessed the dynamic and adaptive aspect of culture during this pandemic. And it's important to remember this adaptive force and not hold on too much to culture as an outcome. When we as an organization, that is the organization Arts Ed, and also my own personal work in cultural mapping, when we deal with cultural diversity, we look at it, as mentioned by the speakers yesterday, from two points of view. One is cultural diversity across geographies. And in both the organization's work, Arts Ed's work, as well as in my own work in cultural mapping, we work in both urban and rural constituencies. And we also work in, when I say across geographies, also national boundaries. But we found that actually cultural diversity is even more challenging to work with within societies because of the ethnic, gender, physical, social, economic differences within societies, and because people have developed certain work cultures, or their disciplines, their professional disciplines are so framed or hardened by the type of work that they do. And as mentioned yesterday, generational differences, diversity has also become quite a challenging issue. So I'd like to keep this in mind, this having to work across geographies and within societies. So how does this kind of culture education, or what role does culture education play in the development of local and global citizenship? I think when we look at culture education, we are looking at facilitating learners and preparing students for citizenship, facilitating learners to overcome ethnocentrism, to understand themselves and to go beyond their own cultures, acquire cultural knowledge, develop cultural sensitivity and competencies, and intercultural practice projects or experiential projects in both local communities as well as across geographies, will expand their sense of belonging and prepare them for global citizenship work. It also empowers them to respond to both local and global problems, and also, very importantly, to have the daring to take responsible action in their work life and also in their personal lives, because that's really important in the practice of global citizenship. So how do we do this? In this practice-based culture education, basically we try to integrate knowledge from the classroom, knowledge from community, and global knowledge, or knowledge of the global situation. So the idea is to bring academic knowledge, which consists of theoretical problem solving from the classroom, into the real cultural context via a project where learners are confronted with vernacular ways of doing and thinking, vernacular knowledge, skills, and problem solving that is embedded in community over time, and then to kind of develop intelligences and competencies from that experience, and to expand it to global situations, like how do these local problems actually contribute or impact on larger global issues. So making connections between the local situation and the global situation. And this will prepare them for their contributions to global citizenship. So I'm going to give you a more concrete example of what I mean. So I'm going to use a recent project that we did during the COVID period last year. And this project basically was conducted in a wet market in Penang. And the intention was to put the team of young people who were aged between, 22 and maybe 30 years old. And they were a learner team who wanted to learn how to work in an intercultural context with a real community. And they were from various disciplines. They consisted of artists, cultural studies people, people from education, media, young people. And the idea was to go into this market site, which was very challenging because there were very diverse groups of stakeholders who held very diverse values and had diverse cultural differences in terms of ethno-cultural differences, as well as having bureaucratic, mindsets, corporate mindsets, particularly government agencies, market management, and the vendors were, Indians, Chinese, Indian Muslims, Malays, etc. So the process was to start by cultural mapping. So as a start, the team conducted a cultural mapping exercise to understand the history of the site. So do remember that this is really a small scale version of the whole process of trying to understand the cultural site and a different cultural site and a different cultural milieu. So they start by mapping the history context of the site, identify who are the community and the stakeholders, and they also identify assets, resources, and issues in the site. And this data was then further analyzed by the group to understand what were the cultural workings and ecosystem in this site. And then next, they brought the stakeholders together to establish a common purpose. And also the team created communication platforms. So the project was narrowed down to tackling the safety and waste, safety issues as well as waste management issues. And they narrowed down to the seafood section of the market. So they started the actual project after the mapping to improve conviviality and trust among the vendors first, and then brought together vendors, market management, and government agencies to collectively voice out their perspectives with regards to this problem of safety and waste management, and to decide on a collective goal together. After that, the team created very creative platforms that would enhance intercultural communication between the groups. So when I say intercultural, I don't mean just ethno-cultural differences. I also mean, bureaucratic culture versus vernacular vendor culture, or corporate culture that is carried by the private company that is managing the waste at the site, or the management of the building, etc. So we had to create and facilitate dialogical platforms for sharing of knowledge between these different parties, so that they would respect each other's knowledge, share their experiences and their opinions. And we also use these platforms later to build consensus and to facilitate decision-making. You can see that we used, sorry, I'll just go back to that, photography, drawings and illustration to bridge the communication gaps, because there were linguistic gaps, there were gaps in educational levels. We even created our own news channels and sent it by WhatsApp to all the stakeholders, because some stakeholders just have their WhatsApp on all day. So these were creative methods of communication, intercultural communication. And then the next step was to actually create action-oriented task groups, which involved different stakeholder groups. And this was to take them beyond the talking to a more embodied experience where they would actually take responsible action towards solving the problem. So in these groups, they would break down and analyze the problem that involved a particular stakeholder group or inter-stakeholder problem, analyze it, and make recommendations towards problem solving. And then they had to build consensus on, okay, how do we solve this problem? What do I have to do and what do you have to do? So just as an example, in the photos on the right, you can see the vendors having a conversation with the waste management company that's running the market or managing the market. And then the vendors actually salvaging their waste, weighing it. And then we found a farmer who was willing to take away the waste and recycle it for his farm. So there was a lot of exchange of information between the groups, where they gave talks on why waste should be recycled, some of the responsibilities of the waste management company, where they had to weigh the waste and send the data to the government, and the vendors had to agree. So they had to change their ways of working, their original ways of working. The farmer had to actually bring his truck to the market, and he had to ask them to prepare the waste in certain types of buckets that were pre-weighed so that he could use very clean waste and not waste that was mixed with plastic or stuff like that. So there was a lot of intercultural communication and adjustment of their working culture that had to take place. And they were working in very different, there were many ethno-cultural differences in the way they work with, which they also had to adjust. Next was, so this is where during the work process, they aggregated brought together all their diverse cultural knowledge and resources, from very professional knowledge and resources to very vernacular kind of practices. And this actually enriched the problem-solving process. So to summarize the process, what happened is during the project, because of this very indirect intercultural interaction and problem solving between the different cultural groups, they moved from a very monocultural mindset to a very intercultural mindset as they went through the mapping, the collective goal setting, working in intercultural groups, problem solving, and they were really proud of their solutions. And really the achievements in the market made both the state government as well as the management, the private management company, very happy. But more importantly, the vendors became really friendly. Previously, they had a very commercial mindset, like I'm selling fish and I don't care about the waste and where it's going, I'll just dump it. And I'm not talking to the vendor next to me because we are in competition. But the atmosphere in the seafood section really changed. And we're hoping to get more vendors, or rather all 100% of vendors to be involved in this process. So what is important to remember is that this leveraging on the third space, where when these groups come together, these different cultural groups come together, they actually have to interact, and they change their behavior, they share their knowledge, they adjust their values and their attitudes, and they do it in this laboratory space that we've created via the project, where they meet. It's a permeable space where they meet, where differences are negotiated and mediated. This is a kind of a space in and between cultural differences, a space of, I think as Brunsma and Delgado put it, a space of transgression, of potential social change, of dialogue, of creativity, where cultural constructs are negotiated and new subjectivities and collectivities are allowed to emerge. And so we see the development of intercultural sensitivity and intercultural competence through these projects. And I'll close with this slide where I kind of summarize the dynamics of, experiential cultural education, or, place-based cultural education for students and even for professionals. Cultural change involves interaction with difference, a redrawing of boundaries, strategies, and actions, a reorganization and recontextualization. Culture is dynamic. So when we are confronted by cultural difference and we experience it, then we reorganize our social processes, and cultural recontextualization takes place. And it's very important, I think, for students to be prepared with this experience, because the process is a knowledge building process as well as an embodied process, which they can take with them when they go into the working world. I'll stop here and give it over to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet, for that very interesting input. Actually, Janet, for your information, Wendy, who is going to speak afterwards, and we were in Vietnam to attend the UpCU. They mentioned you a lot of times, and it was very unfortunate that we were not able to see you in person. Yeah, Wendy, when we were there. Thank you so much, Janet. And we have got questions coming in for you, and I'll reserve that towards the end. Yeah, Janet. Thank you very much. And let's move on to Associate Professor Dr. Wendy Yi Mei Tian. Let me just read a little bit about Wendy. Wendy Yi Mei Tian is the senior lecturer and currently holds the position of Director for Center for Internship Training and Academic Enrichment at the University of Malaya. She received a PhD in 2008 in Youth Studies from the University Putra, Malaysia. She also obtained a certificate in International Relations and Human Rights. She studied at the United Nations University, Tokyo in 2006, and in 2014 obtained a certificate in peace building and intercultural dialogue from the Institute for Peace and Dialogue in Switzerland. She has developed the first module in peace studies at her university, making University of Malaya the only university that offers an undergraduate course on peace and humanities studies. I am so jealous, Wendy. She conducts research and speaks at interreligious forums at the national level. She has also participated in an international capacity building workshop and fostering global citizenship for sustainable communities in Southeast Asia, organized by UNESCO and the Asia Pacific Center of Education for International Understanding. As a peace advocate, she is very passionate about educating the youth in achieving a peaceful and harmonious society through the programs and activities she conducted inside and outside the classroom. And my question for you, Dr. Wendy, how would the notion of global citizenship education be of help in the higher education institution curricula? Where does CQ stand in this matter? So to you now, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Faiza. Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. So before I begin, I would like to once again wish everyone a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, especially to Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Dr. Zulkifli Razak, to Associate Professor Dr. Yasrina Yahya, and of course to my dear panelists, Ms. Vesa, and also to Ms. Janet, and of course to all participants. Thank you so much once again for your kind invitation, and I feel so humbled to be able to speak on this, on this very, very important topic this morning. So coming back to the question that Faiza just raised, I would like to start by discussing from asking ourselves a very important question. Now let me go to my slide first. Let me know if you can't see the slide. Okay. So I would like to begin by asking ourselves this very important question. What is the purpose of education? Is it to advance civilization? In what way? Is it through industry and technological advancement, or through creating more weaponry for mass destruction? Or is it to create more development at the expense of our ecological environment, or to create more jobs, more wealth, while expanding the gaps of inequality across the world? Or to improve health services, to improve the quality of life and expand life expectancy? Now let us ponder on these questions very seriously. Because despite the increase in literacy rate across the world, humanity is still facing many challenging problems in the current century, which of course include systemic racism, discrimination due to structural and cultural violence, and of course due to the politics of narrow nationalism. So if you think about it, just like what Janet and Lisa have just presented as well, every aspect of a society or the development in a society, the people have very important roles to play. This is because a society is basically formed by people, a group of people or groups of people living together. People are the one who actually forms the society. So in other words, the people are either the makers or the breakers of a society. So therefore, the nature of the people living in the society will actually determine the nature of the society itself. Now, so to develop a society, of course, given this context, it is very important for us to address the needs or to address the people themselves. And what is a better way to address the people other than education? So it is really important, if you want to address global issues or global challenges, we need to address the people. And the best way to do that is none other than education. So in the Sanskrit language, human beings is termed as manusha, which has also been adopted in our Malay word, manusia, of course, which means human beings, which also means a thinking being or the one who think. So from this standpoint, intellect is the key, is one of the key conditions of humanity. Now, although we know knowledge has somewhat made the society more comfortable and convenient to a certain extent, bringing industry and wealth, but this intellect that we are talking about is not just about having knowledge per se or just being more literate. It is about having the wisdom to know how to use this knowledge acquired to address the challenges that will eventually benefit society and humanity. So the question is, are we doing that? So and such, if the end point in education focuses on human concerns, or if the end point of education is centered on the well-being of humanity, the society in which the people live will definitely thrive as well. In contrast, if the focus of education is based on the individualistic paradigm, of education, thinking that education is for me, I, and myself, instead of the well-being of the humanity and society, people will definitely become selfish because of such education. People will become self-centered, people will become egoistic, people will become arrogant and narrow-minded. And obviously because of that, humanity will suffer and the society will be in ruin. So there is a very strong relationship between, education, the people, and society. So since education is having such importance in a society, now the next question is, what should be the basis or the foundation of such education? Here, I would like to quote the work of Dr. Namrata Sharma, a faculty at the Department of Curriculum and Instruction, State University of New York, USA. Now, in Dr. Namrata's work, she actually proposed the value-creating global citizenship education as an approach to learning, which actually offers a perspective based on an integrated view of life, right? So I would like to begin by giving some background on the definition of the term value-creating global citizenship education. Basically, it is a phrase developed through a long-term study of Asian perspectives, which have often been neglected in the study of global citizenship education. So basically, value-creating global citizenship education discusses the implications for learning to live together, right? So it brings together the various themes for the practice and learning of global citizenship education. Now, this study includes the educational ideas of Mr. Makiguchi, Dr. Ikeda, and Mr. Mahatma Gandhi. In Mr. Makiguchi's theory of value-creating education, the aim of education is to nurture responsible citizens who can reflect on their personal bias, which often, which very seldom people do. So how do we nurture responsible citizens who can reflect on their personal bias and then make informed decisions that contribute to the general welfare of the people? Now, so in contrast to a Western liberal individualistic framework of global citizenship education, this value-creating framework subscribes to a non-dualistic worldview of life that aim at enhancing relationships through education. So I would think that this is a more holistic approach. We can see a shift from individual empowerment to building relationships through the process of education for sustainable development and global citizenship. So as such, the value-creating global citizenship education seeks to enhance the learner's happiness by strengthening their relationships to other people, other culture, nature, other society, and a wider world. So in other words, no matter how much a learner is learning in terms of knowledge, if they are not building relationships, they have not learned at all. So this paradigm of value-creating global citizenship education aims to foster individuals who can lead contributive lives and to take collective action as global citizens. Now, to me, I felt that this corresponds very well with cultural intelligence. As we know, and as we have heard from Janet and Wesa a little earlier, excuse me, cultural intelligence is not just about being aware of the different cultures, but people with cultural intelligence are also able to work effectively and relate to people across a variety of cultural contexts. And so people with high cultural intelligence, they are basically attuned to the values, attuned to the belief, attitudes, and the body language of people from different cultures, including their own. So that's why Wesa was saying earlier, when we are online, it's already difficult to look at people's faces, and it makes it even harder for us to be able to read the body language of other people. So these are real challenges in terms of cultural intelligence. So therefore, people with high cultural intelligence or people with cultural intelligence, they will use this knowledge to help them to relate to others with empathy and understanding. So therefore, I reckon that we can actually draw parallel between cultural intelligence and value-creating global citizenship education. Because if you look at Sharma's framework of value-creating global citizenship education, she actually proposed 6 themes for its learning and practice. Now, each of these themes help us to develop what Dr. Ikeda calls the living wisdom that can be learned from various cultural traditions that appreciate the unity and the connectedness of lives. This is because having the wisdom to be able to perceive the interconnectedness of all life is an essential element of a global citizen. So I would like to propose that these themes to be considered for fostering cultural intelligence as well. Now let me go through very quickly, very briefly, each of these themes. Now the first theme promotes a sense of interdependence, common humanity, and a global outlook. This can be proposed as a first prerequisite for being a global citizen. Now, to be able to understand our common humanity and develop a global outlook, it actually means one needs to look beyond the limits of our nation state to a new horizons of humanity, right? The humanity community in general. So what this suggests is our education curriculum needs to include the knowledge of not only the dominant groups within national, regional, or global societies, but we also need to include, subordinate the minority and the indigenous groups as well. So we also need to include the cultures, the values of the less widely known perspectives in the practice of global citizenship education. So according to Sharma, this is very, very important and necessary for a variety of reasons. For example, given the presence of the structural and cultural violence and other realities that create inequalities and inequities between people and nation in today's world, so whose values and whose norms are we talking about? So whose values and whose norms will guide global citizens? So therefore, in the discourse and in the practice of global citizenship education, we need to focus on a variety and alternative ways of thinking, of being, of acting and living, and not just informed, by the dominant, values and cultures that we are so attuned to. So it is very important that we need to be informed about the other ways of thinking as well. So this is very crucial in fostering cultural intelligence. Now, the second theme promotes a commitment to reflective, dialogic, and transformative learning. And in Janet's presentation earlier, she talks a lot about the importance of dialogue, the dialogic reflection, and I truly agree to that. It's truly important. So the process of learning cultural intelligence and global citizenship requires a shift from the emphasis of acquiring more knowledge about others. We need to shift to a qualitative approach in which the learner experiences trust, the learner experiences empathy and friendship through the learning processes. And at the same time, it is also essential to develop the learner's own values and attitude through dialogic processes. So I think the activities that Janet presented, it really gives, that platform and opportunity for this learning process to actually happen. Now, the third theme promotes a commitment to sustainable development through intercultural perspectives. Now, to foster global citizenship and cultural intelligence, it requires an engagement with intercultural perspective to provide the space for learners to reflect on their context and their own assumptions of themselves and that of others. So we need to think about, how do we come to think, to be, to feel, to act the way we do, and how others came to think, to feel, and act the way they do. And what are the implications of our local culture and the individual's belief system in making us who we are and making others who they are. So these kind of reflective intercultural perspectives are truly vital. Now, the fourth theme promotes a belief in the value-creating capacity of the for social and self-actualization. Now, in the theory of value-creating education, it advocates that inherent within all human life, there is a capacity to create value for oneself and others under any circumstances. And this capacity should be developed through education. So therefore, when we talk about value creation, it is not just about teaching values per se, but to foster the tenacity, the perseverance, and to generate understanding of the inherent creative potential within all human beings, using that to transform difficulties and challenges we face, especially in fostering cultural intelligence, transforming them into opportunities. So this will help reduce misunderstanding and conflicts due to cultural differences. Now, the fifth theme promotes an awareness of climate change and other natural crises as planetary citizens. Now, this awareness is based on the appreciation for life as creative coexistence. Again, it is a non-dualistic view. It actually perceives the dynamic relationship between the self and the natural and the social environment as being fluid, and it is constantly in a state of creative engagement and coexistence. Now, the final theme promotes an understanding of peace and non-violence as being central to the human rights agenda. Now, this understanding suggests building character through a critical engagement with studies on the living pattern of people and communities across the world, across the Western and non-Western societies that are based on peace and non-violence is essential. Now, besides these 6 themes, there is another very important aspect of the value-creating global citizenship education that I personally feel that the cultural intelligence can also draw parallel is the ability to conduct an inner dialogue. Now, I would like to quote an example. In the essay entitled "Another Way of Seeing Things," Dr. Ikeda narrates the work of Dr. Ona Toynbee, a British historian who reported on the state of the Turkish people during a time in which the Turks and the Muslims were vilified in many parts of Europe during World War I. Now, in this essay, Dr. Ikeda challenges the media stereotyping and how this can actually give rise to prejudice and barriers between people of different culture, nationalities, and religions. So what I did, I actually showed this film to my students in my class, And I asked them to reflect how much they can actually relate to what was highlighted in the film in their everyday intercultural, inter-ethnic relations. How much could they relate to that? So there's this part in the film that all the students agreed that they can totally relate to. And I would like to take this opportunity to share and to quote that. Now, it says, the growth and development of the mass media has actually increased the danger of proliferating stereotypes and ready-made images, and we are all exposed to this risk. So therefore, it is vital for us to ask ourselves some very important questions. Do we accept without questioning the images shown to me? Do I believe unconfirmed reports without first examining them? Have I unwittingly allowed myself to become prejudiced? Do I really grasp the facts of the matter? Or have I confirmed things for myself? Have I gone to the scene? Have I met the people involved? Have I listened to what they have to say? Or am I being swayed by malicious rumors? So I believe this kind of inner dialogue is crucial. So in the context of learning to be a global citizen and developing cultural intelligence, I believe we can all relate to this in our daily lives, and we agree that this inner dialogue is indeed very crucial. So now the question is, how do we act based on such inner dialogue? So Dr. Sharma has proposed 3 guiding notions for thinking, for behaving, and for acting based on such inner dialogues. Now, the first is to become an inclusive citizen. That is to read, to listen, and to experience what is beyond our usual spectrum of engagement. Now, with this, I would like to share what Dr. Ikeda again mentioned in his peace proposal to the United Nations in 2018. He suggests that in the age of technology today, we are now faced with what has been termed as the filter bubble. That is, very often when we search for data in the internet, the return information are often already attuned to the user's preference and obscuring other sources. So what does this mean? It's going to be very troubling, because of this very smart AI technology. So what is troubling about this phenomenon is the degree to which it can impact a person's understanding of the social issues from a broader perspectives, especially with regards to the values and issues we are less familiar with, and as a result, we remain ignorant and indifferent. Now, secondly, the second action is actually about being a creative citizen. To be a creative citizen, we cannot be educating students, for selfish profits, or just limit our focus of education on just passing examinations. Rather, we should focus on nurturing individuals to manifest their unique inherent creative potential to contribute to the benefit of self and others. Now, for this, I would like to quickly give a very pertinent example. Prior to the COVID, in the university, all the lecturers are asked to actually use technology to teach. So especially people like me coming from the dinosaur generation, having to switch to technology, using technology to teach is something, is so difficult for us. So many people actually refuse because we find that it's so tough to do. But as soon as the COVID hit all of us, no choice, is almost like overnight, we all switch to technology and we are all teaching using technology very creatively. So in other words, there's really this inherent creative potential in every individual. So the question is, how do we use them and become a creative citizen? Now, finally, to be active citizens. Now, the starting point of a global citizen and to acquire cultural intelligence is to start taking actions in our immediate environment. For example, when we learn about global issues related to human rights, we could start by questioning whether we can identify problems connected to the violations of human rights in our daily lives and our local community. Or if we are learning about global climate change, we could start by identifying the unsustainable lifestyle in our daily lives, right? So it should start from our immediate community. So in conclusion, allow me to summarize the points that I have presented. So firstly, we need to understand what is the true purpose of education. The end point of education must be centered on fostering the humanity of every learner, to enable every learner to become a citizen that can contribute not only to the well-being of themselves, but that of others and to society in general. Secondly, The foundation of such education is value-creating global citizenship education. It is not an independent curriculum, but a curriculum that focuses on building relationships with other people, culture, nature, and the wider world. Thirdly, we can draw parallel between cultural intelligence and value-creating global citizenship education. The learning and practice of cultural intelligence can be drawn from the 6 major themes found in the value-creating global citizenship education framework. Another important element of a global citizen is the ability to conduct inner dialogue. This ability helps us to examine our inner biases against others who may be different from ourselves. Finally, to become a value-creating global citizen who can contribute to the welfare of self and others, one needs to be an inclusive citizen, a creative citizen, an active citizen, as well as a reflective citizen who takes action starting from our local communities. Now, this is crucial because cultural intelligence needs to be understood as something which can be continuously improved and developed over the duration of our lives. So therefore, being an inclusive citizen and a creative citizen, and active as well as a reflective citizen will help one to improve their cultural awareness and sensitivity, thus allowing them the ability to relate to culturally diverse situations over time. So in summary, it is obvious that global citizen is not determined merely by the number of languages we speak or the number of countries to which one has traveled. It is about having the wisdom to be able to perceive the interconnectedness of all lives and living. It is about having courage, not to deny and not to fear differences, but to respect and strive to understand the people of different cultures and grow from encounters with them. And lastly, to have the compassion to maintain an imaginative empathy that reaches beyond one's immediate surrounding and extend to those in distant places. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation for today, and thank you so much for your long attention. Terima kasih.
Thank you so much, Wendy. As usual, very informative, very rich. Thank you so much. And just to point out, if you are dinosaur, I am fossil. Okay, thank you once again. And now we have come to the question and answer session. I will begin with Wesa, but the other panelists are also invited if you want to chip in or to extend what the answers to one's question. So I'll start with Wesa. The question is, what are some of your dilemmas you have faced in bringing about change in the society to introduce cultural intelligence or the notion of understanding others? This is also in relation to one question from from YouTube. I quote, "Throughout my 3 years experience in Perth, 2004 and 2007, I observed Italians, Lebanese, Vietnamese, Malays, Turkish are very strong with their own community and culture, and they don't mix. The old Italians, Turkish in Perth are not able to speak Australian accent. What do you think is or was the reason?" So this is from Suhaimi Muhammad Sharif. Over to you, Wesa.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, because one of the biggest challenge, I think, talking about cultural diversity is people don't see the need of understanding cultural differences. They tend to think that as long as they only look at behavior. And so what that means is, as long as you behave very similar to me, then, you know, everything should be okay. Until, of course, when people don't behave in the way that they expect, then they start to have judgments about other people. And we also heard in other presentations, it really should not be about the outcome. It really should be about people's mindsets and perceptions and how we think differently, how we understand values differently. We might have different values. Culture should really be about that, and we should really be able to see differences from another person's perspective. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges in getting people to understand that we really shouldn't be just looking at behaviors that people like or dislike. And when I say behavior, it's things like people from certain cultures might not look people in the eye, and people might perceive this as being not honest. But then at the same time, some people don't do it because they want to maintain respect to another person. So understanding that just because people show a certain behavior, it's not what they necessarily think is the case. And so a lot of people, particularly in Australia, we hear people who might say, I'm colorblind, meaning that they don't care about the culture as long as you behave in the way that I expect you to. And I think that's problematic in many ways, because when we talk about cultural diversity, we should accept people's different behaviours, as long as obviously it's within the law as well. Apart from that, people should be able to behave the way they would like to be. And the second question about how to bring communities together, it's very different in Melbourne, I think, in terms of communities working together. And I think partly is the way in which some communities are actually, particularly around like local government areas, and how well the local government actually bring communities together. And it does depend on the state government as well. And I mean, even just me going to Sydney is also not the case, where you do have pockets of communities in different areas and they don't necessarily mix. But at the same time, like I said, I think it does require a government effort where you work on actually bringing those communities together and having the support in which you can bring groups together. And I've seen really good projects where you have leaders of one particular community and leaders of another community actually wanting to work together. And it's safety in numbers. So when you have two groups of people wanting to work together, then you can create projects where you can bring, very different cultures together, and to be able to enjoy, an activity such as cooking. Cooking is actually a really good way. Food always brings people together, and to be able to share their cultural differences as well.
All right, thank you, Wesa. Since we have, I think we are running out of time, so I'm going to ask one question each, right? So I'm going to ask Janet now. You mentioned about the adaptive or transformative force of culture. So I would like you to comment on, the youth culture now. What about the transformative force of youth culture? Probably we have the negative force, the positive force. So can you comment on that?
I think there's more negative culture among older people than among youth. So I'd rather not discriminate. I think culture has that two sides, and we need to keep that in mind. But youth maybe are more in a state of being to take advantage of the adaptable dynamics of culture. So they are able to change faster, they are able to adapt faster. And I think in relation to the topic of global citizenship, it is good to leverage on youth because they have this capacity to change and they have the capacity to culturally adapt. So I think, I mean, in connection to what Reza was saying earlier, I just wonder whether actually we should know when multiculturalism is needed, in what context, when intercultural communication and connection is required, and when transcultural changes are required. They happen in different contexts and they can happen simultaneously in our lives. We don't have to put one aside for the other. And I think young people, especially university students, should be given the opportunity to understand the importance of all the three, multiculturalism, interculturalism, and transculturalism, and when to apply and when to conserve this diversity. So I have no problems with people, birds of a feather flocking together when you want to feel comfortable and you want to communicate certain beliefs or values to people of your kind. But then there are certain contexts when you have to transcend and move.
Thank you so much, Janet. I think that is a platform for more discussion. However, we don't have that time with us, probably in some other time. And let's move on to Wendy. I've got a question for you. How do we as layperson control our personal bias in, of course, a multicultural society like Malaysia?
Thank you very much for that. I think that's a very wonderful question, and it's also a very difficult question, given the fact that we are all human beings. We have emotions, we have feelings, but I would like to, share, or I would like to say from my perspective is, human beings, a lot of times our behavior or our actions are informed by what we have experienced, right? Whether within our home, within our environment, in our school. So I think a lot of time we experience a lot of these things, and these things somewhat inform the biases that we carry with us. So what's really important, as a lay person, as just a general normal human being, we need to have this self-reflection. We need to have this self-reflection, and we need to always ask ourselves questions such as, the inner dialogue that I was talking about. So it's so important for us to keep asking ourselves questions. For example, if you're having a problem with this particular person, so we need to ask ourselves, are all people from this person, from this ethnic group or from this religious group of this person, do they all behave the same? So I can guarantee we will come to a conclusion, not every person from this particular race or not every person from this particular religious group behave the way this particular person is behaving. So thus, such inner dialogue and such reflective, processes, these dialogic processes will be very, very critical for us to be aware of the biases that we carry with us. So until and unless we conduct this inner dialogue, until and unless we conduct this self-reflection constantly, making conscious efforts to do such self-reflection, very easily, we will be pulled or we will be influenced by what we are experiencing, or even our community is talking about. So I guess that such inner dialogue is truly crucial. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I just love this conversation and discussion about the topic. Probably if we have more sessions, and I'm very happy to invite all of us again, and we have this fruitful discussion, very beneficial. And on that note, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank the three of you, Wessa, Janet, and Wendy, for your time today. And hopefully we will meet each other again in other sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we are going to have 5 minutes break before our next session. So thank you again, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Faiza.
Thank you.
Thank you, Isa. Thank you, Janet. Goodbye.
And I would like to contextualize this meeting today is what we call celebrating IIM 2020.
Hari ini, Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan dilaksana di seluruh negara bagi mengekang penularan COVID-19.
Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan mulai 18 Mac 2020 iaitu lusa hingga 31 Mac 2020 di seluruh negara.
Let me reassure you, as far as I am concerned, the situation in the university is well under control.
Universiti Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia UIAM menghasilkan prototipe robot yang boleh membantu doktor berdepan dengan pesakit dengan membuat saringan dari jarak jauh. Robot yang diberi nama Medibot dibangunkan pakar robotik Kuliah Kejuruteraan dan Kuliah Teknologi Maklumat Komunikasi. Dilengkapi alat kawalan jauh bervisual, doktor berinteraksi dengan pesakit tanpa perlu bersemuka. Pasukan khas ini terdiri daripada pencarah, pentadbir dan pelajar yang tinggal dan menginap di kampus Gombak. PPE yang dihasilkan akan dihantar ke Pusat Perubatan UIAM di Kuantan Pahang dan lain-lain hospital yang akan dikenalpasti oleh Malaysian Relief Agency MRA.
Sementara itu, Universiti Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia UIAM mencatat sejarah sebagai institusi pengajian tinggi pertama di negara ini tersenarai sebagai finalis untuk 2 penganugerahan lestari antarabangsa. 2 anugerah itu adalah anugerah Green Gown antarabangsa dalam kategori institusi lestari terbaik dunia dan anugerah memanfaatkan masyarakat menerusi
change the stereotype image of Islam and Muslims in the world.
Anugerah ini merupakan pengiktirafan bagi universiti untuk membuat satu perubahan atas kepakaran yang telah diiktiraf oleh bangsa-bangsa bersatu dalam hal ini.
yang kami hasilkan atau kit kami ialah kit pantas atau dipanggil rapid test kit menggunakan teknologi iaitu nanoteknologi.
Once again, and I look forward to working with you closely for the year 21, 22 and beyond, and I hope we can come together in a more cohesive way after this when we start looking at the roadmap 2021 to 2022 and also taking other initiatives like the Sejahtera Academic Framework and other things that will come by as we move forward in trying to understand what the future will be like. And I would like to contextualize this meeting today is what we call celebrating IIM 2020.
Hari ini, Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan dilaksana di seluruh negara bagi mengekang penularan COVID-19.
Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan mulai 18 Mac 2020 iaitu lusa hingga 31 Mac 2020 di seluruh negara.
Let me reassure you, as far as I am concerned, the situation in the university is well under control.
Universiti Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia UIAM menghasilkan prototipe robot yang boleh membantu doktor berdepan dengan pesakit dengan membuat saringan dari jarak jauh. Robot yang diberi nama Medibot dibangunkan pakar robotik Kuliah Kejuruteraan dan Kuliah Teknologi Maklumat Komunikasi. Dilengkapi alat kawalan jauh bervisual, doktor berinteraksi dengan pesakit tanpa perlu bersemuka. Pasukan khas ini terdiri daripada pencarah, pentadbir dan pelajar yang tinggal dan menginap di kampus Gombak. PPE yang dihasilkan akan dihantar ke Pusat Perubatan UIAM di Kuantan Pahang dan lain-lain hospital yang akan dikenalpasti oleh Malaysian Relief Agency MRA.
Sementara itu, Universiti Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia UIAM mencatat sejarah sebagai institusi pengajian tinggi pertama di negara ini tersenarai sebagai finalis untuk 2 penganugerahan lestari antarabangsa. 2 anugerah itu adalah anugerah Green Gown antarabangsa dalam kategori institusi lestari terbaik dunia dan anugerah memanfaatkan masyarakat menerusi program Light.
Change the stereotype image of Islam and Muslims in the world.
Anugerah ini merupakan pengiktirafan bagi universiti untuk membuat satu perubahan atas kepakaran yang telah diiktiraf oleh bangsa-bangsa bersatu dalam hal ini.
Kit yang kami hasilkan atau kit kami ialah kit pantas atau kita panggil rapid test kit menggunakan teknologi iaitu nanoteknologi.
Thank you once again, and I look forward to working with you closely for the year 21, 22 and beyond, and I hope we can come together in a more cohesive way after this when we start looking at the roadmap 2021 to 2022 and also taking other initiatives like the Sejahtera Academic Framework and other things that will come by as we move forward in trying to understand what the future will be like.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to our second forum for today, which is the fifth forum for our webinar, entitled Cultural Intelligence Awareness, the Perspective of Youth. This forum will be moderated by Dr. Muhammad Azrul Azleen Abdul Hamid from Kulliyah of Language and Management IIUM. Allow me to present Azrul Azleen Abdul Hamid. Dr. Muhammad Azrul joined IIUM after completing his first degree in 2004. He is a senior lecturer at the Department of Arabic Language. He is the senior lecturer at the Department of Arabic Language and at the Kulliyah of Language and Management, International Islamic University, Malaysia. He is currently the Dean of Kulliyah of Language and Management. He is active as a presenter of Reflexi Al-Quran on television and radio. He is also a songwriter, lyricist, and record producer known as Adi Pawan for various local artists including Khay Bahar and Hanifa Amir, Masdi Izan, Izan Tayyib, and Zaki Hanif. With that, help me in welcoming Dr. Muhammad Azrul. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ziad. Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak, IOM Rector, honorable guests, distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day to wherever you are in this globe. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the audience, our discussion topic today is cultural intelligence awareness, the perspective of youth. In chapter 49, verse number 13, the Quran mentions, O mankind, male and female, and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. From this verse, we understand that the Quran highlights the importance of understanding others, not only who understand us, but also who do not meet our cultural norms, and then act on that knowledge in a mutually beneficial way. Sukarno said, give me 1,000 old men, I can move Mount Semeru from its root, but give me 10 youth, I shake the world. So to discuss this issue, we are fortunate today to have 3 young and energetic speakers for this session from various backgrounds. So before we begin our session, let me introduce our panelists today. Our first panelist is Ms. Surani binti Zulkifli. She is a PhD student in the Department of Educational Psychology and Leadership Studies at the University of Victoria. She has an affiliation with the UNESCO Chair in Community-Based Research and Social Responsibility in Higher Education. She uses arts-based methodology in her research to investigate the different ways in which international students navigate the 3 education settings: formal education, non-formal education, and informal learning that we do on a daily basis. She is also a coordinator for the mentor training program at University of Victoria. She also recently published a paper on Feminist Adult Educators' Guide to Aesthetic, Creative, and Disruptive Strategies in Museums and Community last year. Assalamualaikum, Ms. Rani, how are you?
Waalaikumsalam. I'm good, thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Our second panelist is Mr. Muhammad Karif Daniel Abdullah, known as Maddan. Maddan arrived on the shores of Terengganu in 2009 and fell in love with the Malaysian culture and way of life. He's now fluent in Bahasa Melayu, specializing in the Terengganu dialect, and reverted to Islam in 2013. After 6 years of island life, he was discovered by a producer who gave him his first hosting job, Maddan Kaki Jalan, and now he has expanded his portfolio into acting, emceeing, modeling, live hosting, and more. Among his shows are Haramain Backpackers 1 and 2 by Astro, Maddan Maridah, RTM, and Traveloka. He married his sweetheart in March 2017 and is planning to settle down in Malaysia and carry on his work in show business. Assalamualaikum, Maddan. How are you doing?
Waalaikumsalam. Doing good, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. Yeah, all good, thank you.
Okay, so our third speaker is Mr. Aris Ramli, known as Caprice. He brought up in a family of diplomats. Aris Ramli grew up in France, Jordan, and Algeria before returning back to Malaysia to complete his high school. His passion in music and technology gave him a unique age of understanding the youth and creating songs or apps that has left a social impact within many schools, colleges, and universities. Having over 7 #1 hit singles on local radio, an online tuition website that was sold to Johor Corporation, to Mengaji.com with over 400,000 global users, ARIS or Caprice aims to innovate and empower the youth. A young entrepreneur with his hands in many places, ultimately he wants to help uplift the mindset of our people and progress the country forward with compassion, innovation, and technology. Assalamualaikum Caprice. How are things going?
Waalaikumsalam. Alhamdulillah, brother.
Alhamdulillah.
Not too bad, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So let's start our discussion today. Before that, I'm going to give you about 20 minutes for each speaker to speak, and we'll put the Q&A right at the end. So the first question will go to Ms. Rene. So talking about cultural intelligence, the role of youth is very important when they work through cultural dynamic and learn how to advance the work they do to move beyond cultural competence to cultural intelligence. Your thoughts on cultural intelligence and youth, how can youth be more empowered and engaged in multicultural Malaysia? The floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Azra, for the kind introduction and for the very thoughtful question. First and foremost, Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera and greeting of peace to everyone, wherever you are tuning in the world today. Thank you for having me on this forum. I'm very humbled to be here. I'm humbled that the organizers think I have, something important to share. So I think I'll share my screen. And hopefully in the presentation that I'll be giving today, I'll be answering your question indirectly or maybe directly, Dr. Azro. So before I proceed with my presentation, I'd like to express my gratitude to be presenting from the traditional territory of the Lekwangan peoples, represented today by the Esquimalt and Songhees Nation. I've been fortunate to live and work on the Lekwangan territory for several years now as a visitor, and I'm very grateful for that. In Canada, we acknowledge the unceded traditional lands we are on as a conscious effort of decolonizing, which I think is pertinent to our topic of cultural intelligence. And with this awareness, I've made it a practice to look up on the traditional lands of which I am on whenever I travel during the pre-COVID times. Also, as a disclaimer, I was born and raised in Nusantara, or the Malay archipelago, known today as Malaysia. I moved to Turtle Island, known today as Canada, for my post-secondary education, and I have been here since, alhamdulillah. Today's topic is an important one to me, as it informs my experience as an international student in Canada, and these experiences have inspired my doctoral research, in which I will briefly share in the presentation, inshallah. Now, when the talk of intelligence was first discussed, people were more interested in exploring what we know today as IQ, or intelligence quotient. In fact, Garner has identified 8 types of intelligence, labeling it as multiple intelligence. The 8 compartmentalized intelligences are linguistic intelligence, logical, mathematical, spatial, kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, intrapersonal, and naturalist intelligence. While these different types of intelligence are valid and important to me, it isn't the complete picture of what intelligence is all about. There are some missing pieces, as it's been brought up by multiple panelists in the previous forums. And one of them is EQ, also known as emotional intelligence, and the other is CQ, also known as cultural intelligence, that will be talked about today. These different types of intelligences have to be practiced in tandem to enable us to work with others of different backgrounds, different experiences, different worldviews, and in our highly globalized world today, working with others of different backgrounds is inevitable. So cultural and spiritual intelligence, if I may add, are much needed today, but how do we get there? Firstly, having cultural intelligence means that we acknowledge and accept other types of knowing and understanding of the world, the different epistemology or knowledge systems such as indigenous local knowledge system and Eastern knowledge systems. And we must see these knowledge systems as equally valid as the mainstream systems. While IQ is given importance in the mainstream Eurocentric discourses in indigenous local knowledges, this approach of a holistic framework that encompasses of IQ, EQ, and CQ, as well as spiritual intelligence, have long existed. So one example was shared by Prof. Zul yesterday in Forum 2, where he had discussed the framework of Sejahtera in Malaysia. So what is Sejahtera? Sejahtera consists of 10 different elements interwoven into the acronym SPICES. And these 10 elements cover spiritual for the S, physical, psychological for the P, intellectual, the I, cognitive and cultural for the C's, ethical, emotional, ecological for the E's, as well as economic and societal dimensions that represents the S. So the Sejahtera framework works inward outwardly, as you can see here, which means that the inside, you work from the inside to the outside, and that balances our inner self with the outer world. Similarly, the indigenous community in Canada has a holistic framework that reflects on the interconnectedness of the physical, emotional, intellectual, and cultural or spiritual realms. And these four aspects are also interwoven with the interconnectedness of relationships of the individual, family, community, and nation. And as you can see here, this indigenous knowledge system promote balance as they are holistic, where they consider all aspects that influence us, not only as a person, but also as a community member. They are values-based, where they put importance in mutual trust, respect, compassion, empathy, sympathy, other values that's been discussed in the previous forums. And also, it's collaborative. Now, intelligence alone is not enough. We must have the wisdom into knowing when and how to practice it. One way that I have practiced in my own research and teaching is through participatory arts-based research. And as Dr. Azrul mentioned just now, my research focuses on international students coming to critical consciousness or awareness of social justice issues through their formal learning, which is the learning in the classroom, and their non-formal learning, which is the learning outside of the classroom, which is somewhat structured, for example, attending a workshop, and also their informal learning, which are learning that they learn through, through observations, using participatory arts-based methodology. And before I get into that, let's look at what arts-based research is. So arts-based research is derived from the qualitative paradigm of research, which means that it's more interested in understanding the why and the how of human experiences and behavior. And arts-based research can be defined as the systematic use of the artistic process, the actual making of artistic expressions in all of the different forms of the arts, and as a primary way of understanding and examining experience by both researchers and the people that they involve in their studies. Arts-based research nowadays researchers are more inclined in conducting arts-based research because it extends beyond academia naturally, which means that it has the capability of broadening the social research audiences and or participants. Because of that, arts-based research is seen as a more inclusive type of research. However, as we know, this hasn't always been the case. The colonial scientific research, also known as positivism, had their own interpretation of knowledge, where they believe in finding the truth based on scientific methods that can be discovered, measured, controlled, evaluated via objective means employed by neutral researchers. And this type of research is very limiting, as people are more complex than just numbers. And in fact, sometimes it can also be very harmful when you work in a community type of setting. The next point I'll be sharing are related to one another. However, they also stand on their own. So why arts-based research? Well, evidently, as arts-based research is participatory, where participants of non-academic stakeholders, such as community members, are informed and valued as full equal collaborators. You'll be doing research with them and not on them. Those are two important distinctions. Secondly, it's also as a mean of creating critical awareness or raising consciousness. The arts have the power in bringing awareness and critical consciousness to people from all walks of life regarding the importance of addressing and improving social injustice issues that are infesting our world today. This is important in social justice-oriented research that seeks to reveal power relations that is often invisible to those in privileged groups. Arts-based research also cultivates new insights and illuminates aspects of the social world and human experience. It allows participants to think about issues in visual and creative ways, using symbolisms, metaphors, satire, irony, juxtaposition, etc. And it also promotes reflection. Not only that, arts-based research also amplifies voices of marginalized groups and focuses on people whom society has conveniently abandoned, silenced, or forgotten. To quote Levy, she said, "The arts have the capability of dismantling stereotypes, accessing the voices of marginalized groups, and engaging in research that propels social change." Arts-based research also prompts emotional responses. It enables a person to have a deeper learning as it taps into emotions and stimulates new ways of thinking and seeing issues or a topic. And sometimes, depends on the forms of the arts, there can be an immediacy in the responses that we don't experience in other types of research forms. For example, in theater, in participatory theater, people would laugh, cry, smile, depending on the scenes. So arts-based research increases our attention to complexity, to differences, and commonality. Arts-based research also put importance in the process rather than the product. What does this mean? It means that it emphasizes on knowing, and sometimes the process of making the arts outweighs the art as a product itself. This knowing encourages a shift in understanding of what counts as evidence, and it gives a renewed appreciation for complexity and different dimensions in creating knowledge. And lastly, arts-based research also allows for praxis. It promotes reflection and dialogue, which is critical to cultivate understanding. Because arts-based practices evoke emotions responses, and so the dialogue sparked by arts-based practices is highly engaged. And because it's also both reflective and reflexive, it encourages participants to take informed action. So, for my doctoral research, I organized a 3-day workshop and recruited other international student participants from various parts of the world, in Asia, in South America, in the Middle East, and in the Caribbean. And they were a mix of international undergraduate and graduate students. And in this 3-day workshop, I dedicated a separate afternoon for the participants to get to know each other, solely for the purpose of getting to know each other and building trust through a low-risk icebreaker activity. And as I mentioned earlier, the overall objective of my doctoral research is to inquire on the international students' awareness regarding social justice issues through their formal and non-formal education, as well as their informal learning on campus. And I was also interested in finding out the kinds of informed action they might take to improve unjust situations in their local communities. So I used 3 different arts-based methods. but I'll only go into one in depth due to the interest of time. So one of the methods that I used was collage. I also used image-based method. And lastly, I used photo voice. And these are some examples of the data that we have co-created together. So in giving example of the picture taken for the photo voice activity, it was taken by one participant who was visibly Black Muslim woman, and she had chosen the theme of racism and shared her first few realizations that she was viewed differently by the people around her after taking the morning bus to the university and back home as her daily routine. And she shared this by taking a photograph of the bus route number, as you can see here, located at the bus stop on campus. And she had frequently taken, as I mentioned, she had frequently taken this bus. It's almost as a daily routine, but through the representation of her photo, she had managed to unpack and delve into both the overt and covert racism she faced on almost a daily basis. And taking the photo had given her a creative and critical space to reflect on her personal experience, as she revealed that, you know, previously she would have never given much thought, even when she faced so many bad and racist experiences on the bus. So with that example, I end my presentation, and I look forward to the discussion sessions. Thank you for listening. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Rainey. What I can conclude from your points, the arts-based research has power in bringing in the awareness and allows for practice. And from the research, we know the know-how, strategies, and approaches to understand the cultural intelligence. So let's move on to Maddan. Maddan, it's now your turn. So from your point of view as an outsider initially, what is your perspective of Malaysian diversity? In what ways do you think Malaysian youth can develop themselves into being role models or influencers for the next generation? Please, Maddan, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for inviting me today. Thank you to all relevant parties, IAUM, relevant parties for inviting me. I feel somewhat unqualified maybe to be speaking here, but all I can do in my my short 20 minutes today is just to share my experiences and my opinions really on what I feel about Malaysian diversity and also the youth of Malaysia and what the youth can do. So my question, I'll break it down into, it's two questions, so I'll break it down into 2 points. So first of all, my perspective on Malaysian diversity. Now, to answer this, I have to take myself back to when I first came to Malaysia in 2009. I came here by chance. I never planned on really coming here. I was backpacking around Southeast Asia, and it just so happened that I was in Thailand, had a flight from Singapore. So I had to kind of transit through Malaysia. So it was completely by chance and really luck that I found Malaysia. So I want to take you back to my first day that I arrived on the east coast of Malaysia from Thailand. And like I said, I knew nothing about Malaysia. I also knew nobody, or where I was going to sleep, where I was going to stay. I normally around the backpacking route, there's kind of a lot of people, a lot of like workers from hotels and guest houses and whatnot that kind of, once you step off the bus or the train, they kind of point you in the right direction. Or, you know, there's a hotel, come with me, all those kind of things. So I was somewhat dependent on somebody being there to kind of point me in the right direction. But being on the East Coast in Terengganu, which is one of the cities on the East Coast of Malaysia, at around 9-10 o'clock at night, it was like a ghost town. There was nobody there. So I was kind of taken aback, like, well, where am I going to go? I don't know anywhere. I don't know any, where's the hotels? I knew nothing. So there was a small, I noticed a small coffee shop just down the road. So I had my travel guide in my bag. So I kind of sat down at the coffee shop, ordered a drink, looked through my travel book, and to find out, where I'm going to stay tonight. As I was, I found somewhere to stay, finished my drink, went to pay at the counter for, the drink that I just consumed. And the guy at the counter said, you know, the table next to you paid for your drink. I was like, why? And then, you know, I was 19 at this time. And in the 19 years that I spent living in the UK, very, very rarely anybody had ever paid for a drink or, you know, anything really. Even close friends, family even, you know, it's very much you go Dutch, you pay for what you have. Even, you know, you get a bill, you split the bill. That's what it is. So very, very rarely you just get somebody, even especially a stranger, paying for your drink. Although it was only a couple of ringgit, maybe 1 or 2 ringgits, but that's beside the point. So I was really taken aback and wanted to kind of inquire as to, you know, why. What did I do to deserve this kind of generosity? So I asked the table who were luckily still in the restaurant, you know, how come you pay? Why did you pay for my drink? I was at that point, I was a backpacker. I had quite long hair. I was wearing shorts, a singlet. I probably had a very beaten up pair of slippers or flip flops on. So I thought maybe they saw me and thought he hasn't got any money or something. But once I spoke to him, he was a Malay guy. He was with his family. So once I spoke to him and he kind of explained to me that this is our culture, and you are obviously a guest who probably just arrived. So if I can just do something small today to kind of relieve the burden of you backpacking or you not knowing where you're going to go, alhamdulillah, if I can do just a small thing to help you today, then, that's my job's done. And I was really taken back by that kind of attitude. And like I said, this was my first hour even in Malaysia. And really my first kind of interaction and conversation with somebody, a Muslim. Because before that, my hometown in UK is very much white middle class, very much white middle class. So I went to school. In my class, there was maybe, I think one Chinese guy, one Chinese pupil student in the whole class of say 30, 35 kids. So very much white middle class. So that was my really first interaction with a Muslim in Malaysia, a country which I had no intention of coming to in the first place, a country which I didn't even know where on the map was. But that really kind of opened up my eyes really and kind of made me think really, because all that I knew about Muslims before that was so much kind of negative things that we see in the media, especially in Western media. At that time, very much Islamophobia was very much in full swing. So all I kind of knew was, the things that you see, terrorism and all these things that you get from a lot of mainstream Western media. So to kind of have that interaction as my first interaction, it really got me thinking. It really got me kind of wanted to find out more about this, more about Malaysia, more about the culture, and more about, what is, especially Muslim and what is Malaysian culture all about. But I found out later as I left Terengganu and went to Kuala Lumpur, that if we're talking about diversity, Terengganu, the East Coast, is very much a Muslim Malay state. So there's maybe, I think it's 90%, maybe, I don't know the percentage, sorry, but a very high percent of Malay as opposed to either the two other main groups, Chinese or Indian. So I was very much surrounded a lot of the time by the Malay, the Malays. Learned to speak the language, made a lot of best friends even until this day in Terengganu. So that's like my positive story. The other story which I want to say is, it's not negative. It's just highlighting maybe some problems which Malaysia still has in terms of diversity. It was still early on in my days in Malaysia, maybe 2009, middle 2000. I've probably been here for about 3 or 4 months. And I was in KL. I had some stuff to do in KL, and I was visiting a friend in KL. So I took a taxi, gave the taxi driver, he was a Chinese uncle. Now this story is no derogatory, nothing targeted at any other any other group or religion or whatever. It's just what happened to me, my story. So I was in the taxi with this Chinese uncle, very nice guy, talking to him. So I gave him the address, he drove me there. And as we arrived to where I was going, he turned around, he looked at me, he's like, you know, this is a Malay area, right? Like, are you sure you want to come here? And the way he said it was like, this is dangerous for you to be here. It was almost like going to the slums in Brazil or something. I was like, yeah, I know. He's like, are you sure? Like, I can drop, are you sure to drop you off here? It's dangerous for you. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's dangerous. It's not dangerous for me. What's dangerous about it? And that was my first real eye-opener that there is something there. There's definitely a difference there's definitely differences, cultural differences within the population from the three main on the Peninsula of Malaysia, with the three main I call them, groups, Chinese, Indian, and Malay. So that was a kind of a big eye-opener for me, and it really got me thinking that, at that point I don't really remember, at that point I probably compared then my experiences here to the UK, to what would happen in the UK. But later on, in hindsight, I realized that I don't do it now, and you cannot do that, because the UK and Malaysia and any other country really, they're fundamentally different. Malaysia is fundamentally different to the UK in terms of religion, race, all these things. So for me then at that time to compare, that would never happen in the UK. If I was to go to this area and have, a white taxi driver say this about, African UK or whatever. So why did it happen here? But I realized later on in hindsight that that's completely wrong, because the setups of the countries, identities of the two countries are completely different. So for me to compare to my hometown, my home country, I realized that later on that was completely wrong. Malaysia has its own identity and its own way of doing things. Some are better than the other countries do what, some are not. But that's just, that's the world we live in and the culture that we live in. But I mean, I'm lucky that I got to leave my hometown, I got to leave my own country, and really have my eyes open to the diversity of the world. And I really think that to really understand, or even get a grip, not even understand fully, just to get a grip on diversity and just see different cultures, you really have to leave your own comfort zone, get out of your own place, your hometown, friends, what you know. You have to get out of your comfort zone and go and see the world, or go and see what the world has to offer. I mean, there's so much more than what I had at the time in my hometown, which was my routine of 9 to 5 job, finish work, go out with friends, spend all my money on the weekend, Monday back to work again, just in this cycle, which is really not good for your mental health. It's not good for your physical health. Like you mentioned earlier, I converted to Islam in 2013. So at that time, I was still obviously a non-Muslim, and I was still going out partying and doing all these things and really not living a very sensible life. Alhamdulillah, I found Islam in 2013, and it changed me fundamentally. Again, it changed me into a completely different person. I left all of the things which got me into bad places, bad habits. I left them all behind a very long time ago, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. But yeah, I'm a big advocate for, if you want to expand, if you want to open your eyes, you want to expand, and you want to see the world, and you want to be more kind of culturally inept, you really have to leave behind what you know, your comfort zone, and go out and see the world, which obviously right now we can't do it right now. We're all locked down and in a pandemic. So I don't know, and we don't know the effects that's going to have later on. I mean, luckily soon we might be able to open back up again, and people will be able to start traveling again. But there might be in our youth, say, a 1 or 2 year gap of where people have kind of been left out or left behind, or didn't get the chance to go and see the world, and the effects that might have later on for people's mental health is, we're just going to have to wait and see. But yeah, like I said, I'm a big advocate for people really going out, seeing the world, and really creating your own identity. And I did it in my kind of my formable years. So from 19 until now, but from say 19 until 25, 26, I was backpacking. So over those years, I mean, those are the, say, your university years where you discover who you are. And yeah, I discovered who I was in those years. And because I was probably away from my hometown, away from friends, out of what I knew and what I grew up with, it's made me into what I am today. So yeah, I just hope that with the pandemic, that people still get this opportunity soon, that we can carry on, people can go out and see the world for what it really is, and not just be stuck in your hometown with your kind of your blinkers on, and just doing what you see around you every day, because there's so much more this world has to offer, and it really opens up your mind really to what is available for us. Okay, so second part of the question, in what ways do you think Malaysian youths can develop themselves into being role models for the next generation? Okay, I saw something very interesting yesterday. This is actually part of what I saw. I was wasting time on YouTube, as you do, and I was watching I don't know if you've heard of him, a Jordan Peterson video. So he was saying that he's a Canadian lecturer at the University of Canada or somewhere. So he was talking about how the youth and how undergraduates waste their time. And he did a study, and it shows that the youth, me and everybody else included, we waste in between 4 to 6 hours a day on watching pointers videos on YouTube, on social media. Now that's a long time, 4 to 6 hours every day on average, of course. We spend that, not being productive, and just wasting it, getting locked into that algorithm cycle that you get on YouTube of just clicking next video, next video, next video, next video. Now, if you convert that into, say, financial money kind of a sense, if you say 4 hours a day you are wasting, if you then say, right, my job, what I do for work, I get paid, say 20 ringgit per hour, that's what I'm worth. That's 80 ringgit a day that you are sitting around wasting. That's 400 ringgit a week, it's 1,600 ringgit a month, it's nearly 20,000 ringgit a year that you could be earning, that you're just sitting around wasting, being sucked into the algorithms of social media and YouTube. So that's maybe something to think about for the youth. Spend your time more productively. Use social media, use YouTube. I think now probably 99% of all the youth are going to be on social media, some form, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or whatever. There's so many different platforms coming out. So use it productively. And especially now where everybody has their own voice, everybody can be some sort of, anybody can go viral, basically. You can put something on the internet, click upload, and you have no control over it whatsoever, where it's going to go, who's going to share it, who's going to reshare it. So yeah, you have no control over that. So you wouldn't want to be at the butt of putting something on there which is false, which is fake news, which is maybe derogatory or maybe degrading to certain people. So really, yeah, use your time on social media responsibly, and always remember that the youth are it's on us. Where Malaysia is going to go, it's on us. And I think our panel after this, Caprice, I love what you did the other day with your live with the after the Israeli and in the middle of the Israeli-Palestinian, we'll call it oppression, conflict, whatever word you want to use, because it's highlighting the issue, but it's also opening people's minds and opening people's eyes to a matter which, it's a different angle towards it. It's a completely different angle doing it. Before that, everybody's just attacking, but it's actually, it's okay. Let's not give them a chance, but let's hear and have a proper discussion about this. Because if we just fight, it's not going to get anywhere. And it's the same it's the same also for most people. For me, also on social media, I put a video on the other day about the Rohingya, a video of Rohingyas being beaten on a boat, running away from from Myanmar on a boat, probably to either Indonesia or Malaysia. And I got negative feedback for it. People misunderstood it, misunderstood my point. But like I said, I got probably, 1,000 people then, all demanding that I take down the video, or I shut up, or I do all these things. But if I was to then comment back to each individual thing, it turns into some kind of slinging match on social media, which isn't going to get anywhere, which isn't going to go anywhere. That's not the way to do it. So yeah, I mean, my point of sharing that video was not to say, okay, Malaysia, open your doors to all Rohingya, this is where they've got to come, give them a home here. That wasn't the point of the video. It was highlighting oppression. And I'm a big firm believer, if we need to end oppression, we need to end oppression for all. We can't just pick and choose. So that's one example of social media, how it can be positive, how it can be negative. Because I think that right now, the youth are really the best placed, and really one of the only places to be a role model for the next generation is on social media. We don't know where it's going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. We have no idea. I mean, every day, every month, new platforms come out, new things come out on social media. So really, we have no idea what the world is going to look like. And that's the problem. Right now in schools, universities, we are educating the youth who are going to be the next workforce for the next generation. But we have no idea what that workforce or what that world is going to look like 5 or 10 years from now. So how do we educate for that? That's the big challenge, I think, which the education system has on how to really educate the youth. And we have no idea what it's going to look like. So I think we all have a moral obligation I highlight in social media, it's only one form really of being a good role model for the next generation, but it's probably something that the youth of today can really latch onto and can understand. But we have a moral obligation on social media and on all forms of all platforms really, to check content which we're putting on. Is it right, especially now with all of these fake news and around in terms of the virus, the vaccine for COVID-19 is a good one. A lot of fake news is being spread around on WhatsApp groups and whatever about vaccines and all these things, where that's really harmful, not only to the individual, but to the whole country. We all need to get vaccinated and we all need to get vaccinated fast. So yeah, we really have to check. There are, there are independently commissioned bodies that say that check, when we put something onto YouTube, it will be checked by YouTube to make sure it's content that's not going to offend anybody, or it's not, it's right to be on YouTube. But still things slip through the net, things go on which are still shouldn't be seen, especially by the younger. So the youth have to remember that kids as young as 3 or 4 or 5 are now on social media, are watching YouTube, like it or not, especially under lockdown. Parents are tired, they just stick an iPad or a phone in front of the kid and okay, there you go, that's your day today. So chances that the young of today will see what we're putting on there are very high. So always remember that, always be responsible. But yeah, we are the next generation. The youth of today are the next generation. So it's up to us to take Malaysia in the right direction. And I think we are doing that. And I think Malaysia, I love this country. I've been here for coming up to 12, 13 years now. I wouldn't be here if I didn't love the country. But I also have an invested interest in Malaysia going to in the right direction. I obviously have a family which I love and plan on spending the rest of my days here, inshallah. I will end on that note. So thank you again to IIUM, and thank you to all relevant parties for listening to me today. Like I said earlier on, I feel somewhat unqualified. Suryani, she was like, studying to be a doctor and all these things, and there's me just plain old Mat Dan sitting in his house. But all I can do is share my thoughts, my experiences, and if only one person learn something or get something from what I've shared today, alhamdulillah, that's all I'm happy with that. So yeah, thank you, terima kasih, and hopefully we'll see you again. Thank you guys.
Okay, thank you, Madan.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
it was a nice story talking about your experience when you were first time in Malaysia as a backpacker. You appreciate our culture, then you fell in love with Malaysia, and the interesting part is you fell in love with your sweetheart from Malaysia also. So to express that feeling in bahasa Melayu, jatuh ke hati.
Jatuh ke hati.
And then the second point that you mentioned about we need to live behind what we know. So we need to put effort to understand others. And number three, to rethink and evaluate how do we use our time on social media. So we need to be productive and use the social media to educate people. So now we continue our discussion with Caprice. Caprice, right now you have 1.6 million followers on IG. And recently you have made a daring move on social media by discussing the Palestine-Israel conflict. The very discussion actually has sparked interest, especially among Malaysian youth. My question is, what are the attributes that youth should develop to be more culturally intelligent, tolerant, and most importantly, knowledgeable, to refute and rebut unconfirmed claims? Please, Caprice.
Okay, first of all, just want to briefly say thank you to UIA for inviting me for this talk. It's an honor to share the stage among some great people. I believe one of the things that I guess I was lucky was that my parents were diplomats working for the Malaysian embassies. So I grew up in Jordan, Algeria, France, Venezuela, came back to Malaysia, studied at ISKL, Sekolah International Kuala Lumpur. And I did my IB. What happened was during my, I guess, upbringing in Jordan, Algeria, France, we were exposed. I was exposed to many different countries, races, religion at a very early age. We're talking about from 6 years old all the way to 14. I was exposed to so much culture, to so much different races, to so many different religions that I was already, by the time I was 17, 18, and I was living in Malaysia, I already had I didn't have any prejudices. I didn't have any predetermined view on anyone. And what was shocking to me was the moment that the story is long, but I ran away from home to do music. My parents are hardcore, more hardcore Malay family you can get into. They're very, very strict. So obviously when I say I want to rap, they got angry. And especially when your dad is a diplomat and serving the government, there are educational benefits for when your dad is a diplomat. Hospital benefits, medical benefits, educational benefits, where they cover the cost. And I scored really well in my IB. I had a full scholarship to study abroad, but I decided to rap. So when I ran away from home, one of the first thing that hit me was my first song on radio was called Leng Loi. That was my first song. Please don't Google it, don't YouTube it. I was too young. But my first song on Hits FM was called Leng Loi. So I remember at the interview, the first interview, I guess is the first time Malaysia got to know Caprice. They were like, they thought I was half Chinese. They thought I was Singaporean. So when I said, oh, I'm Malay, they're like, oh, I'm like, you? Why is your first song called Leng Loi? I was like, why not? My first 3 girlfriends were Chinese. What's wrong? So they were so shocked the fact that this Malay boy, first song was about Leng Loi, and his girlfriends were all Chinese. And that for me was like my first brick wall into, we live in a supposedly multicultural country, supposedly multicultural society, but having a Malay boy dating a Malay girl, making a song about Malay boy dating a Chinese girl, making a song about a Chinese girl was shocking to even an Astro. We're talking about a radio station in Astro. So as much as we love to say like we are a beautiful country of mixed races and religion, the more I grew up and the more I saw in what I saw in Malaysia, the more I realized how boxed in we really are, that we live, that we're how boxed in we really are. And I guess one of the pros of starting my career off in music is I was able to reach out to a lot of kids, because most of my music attracted the kids in the first place. So I was performing at a lot of proms, I was performing at a lot of IU days, schools in the early ages of my career. And after I started my whole jihad and started giving talks at schools and colleges, I realized, man, we have some fundamental problems. As much as we talk about cultural intelligence, but we have to look at the system, right? The system is what creates your end product. You know, if you enter any car, a car factory, whatever goes through the belt and comes out as the car, if something is wrong with the system, the car is the problem. Then the car will have problems, right? So I've been trying to go the Kementerian Pendidikan, our Ministry of Education. Like, we really have to revamp our system of education, because obviously our end product is not what we want it to be. There's so many social problems within the country. There's so many still how do you say this, narrow-mindedness among people that graduated even from private universities. I was on live last night attending some racist issue and some religious issue with somebody who graduated at a very prestigious private college here in KL. So the fact that a guy can graduate from an international private campus and still have a very fickle view of things, I don't blame the campus. I blame most likely his high school or his upbringing, right? So when we talk about how do we advance people to think critically or think internationally, first of all, we really have to attend to the system of education within Malaysia. That, for me, first and foremost, it needs a revamp. From top to toe, full revamp of how the school system worked. We're not talking about a brand new idea here. I grew up in Jordan, Algeria, Paris. I've studied at an international school. However, the end product of Caprice was literally my upbringing, right? The way that I was able to not judge people. Even the whole Palestinian and Israeli issue, I mentioned it during my IG Live. I had a friend who was Jewish in Jordan. I was at the American Community School of Amman. He was being bullied every day for being Jewish. And at that point in time, when you're 12 years old, you don't think whether he's Jewish or Muslim or whatever. I protected him just for the sake, because he was bullied, and for me, it's not cool to see a kid being bullied. You know, so one of the things that I feel like people have to Malaysia has to address is the system of education. Number one. Number two is I would love for most leaders, pemimpin Islam yang sangat-sangat hebat, to really refrain from propagating race and religion as a means for their own personal agenda, as a means to a vote, or as a means to divide people, right? By right, we as Malaysians should be united, and our competitor or our enemies are the international community. That's who we should compete with, not your neighbors, not your jiran, not the next guy next to you. That's supposed to be the people that we should rapakan stuff and be united with. But I really blame, I'll be honest, I really blame the system, the culture that has been cultivated because of that system, right? We are, if like the analogy of the car factory, literally, if you look at the end product of the youth today and you want to put a blame on something, I will put the blame on a system of education, because the system of education has hold of children for over 7 years. So you're telling me if you hold kids for 7 years, you can't turn out critical thinkers? If you hold kids for 7 years, you're talking about umur from the age of what? When do kids go to school? From the age of 8 all the way to 16, 17, right? If you're telling me if you can hold kids for 8 years and you cannot churn out critical thinkers, just some basics, critical thinkers, or you churn out some passionate kids that understand religion and race and appreciate religion and race, something is wrong with the system. Plain and simple. Plain and simple, right? If you hold kids for 8 years, or however, 5 years even, if you hold kids for 5 years from Sekolah Menengah, Sekolah Rendah, all the way to Sekolah Menengah, and you fail to churn out kids who are passionate about other religions and races, you have to look at the factory. You have to look at the factory that makes the cars and ask yourself, what is wrong with the factory that the window is always having problems? What is wrong with the factory that the engine is always having problems? You have to look at the factory. That's for me number one. Number two, I always talk about our comfort level, right? I wouldn't specify which race, but I think we all know. UIA, you would know which race I'm referring to. We are very, very comfortable. We have many benefits. We have many upper hand in society, but that has made us very, very comfortable. The fact that a particular race has more benefits, has more say in society, has made us comfortable, not competitive. We have the wrong idea here. We assume that by protecting a race or being more how do you say this in a nice way at UIA? When you are protective of a race and you give more benefits at a race, in fact, that has not made us more competitive. That has made more of us lazy. And Tun Dr. Mahathir has had this whole speech on the Malay dilemma. Excuse me, there you go. I just third mention, you know. And so is the factory making us more lazy or more competitive? So these are things where we really have to sit down and address on a bigger level. But from what I've seen in my upbringing as a kid to my career in music, and then starting my whole jihad, we're trying to change the mindset of the youth and trying to work with various ministries. Those are the two things that which I feel can have a high impact on whether we are culturally advanced or intelligent. It's not like rocket science here. It's literally, if I had a solution, revamp the whole system and remove some sort of comfort, remove any sofa that looks nice, remove the chairs that we've been sitting on, because that's the only way we progress. That's if we just break it down to basics and not focus on rocket science, remove every comfort items from us and trust us. Trust me, we will grow. Remove every pillow from us and trust me, we will grow. It's just that too many people are scared to lose their pillows, too scared to lose their sofa, too scared to lose a chair. But the chair that they're sitting on now has been the same chair that their grandma's been sitting on, my great grandfather's been sitting on. Nothing wrong with a chair. But you as a young guy, you got to get out of your chair and start innovating. Stop being comfortable. Just because your grandpa sat on a chair, your great grandmother sat on a chair, doesn't mean you should sit on a chair and just be comfortable. By right, you should be innovating, right? So those are things that I feel like are things that we have to address, and it's not rocket science really. It's just remove every comfort level. If you want us to progress or someone to progress, remove his lollipop, remove his pillow. Trust me, apabila orang dalam keadaan susah, whenever anyone struggles, this is like basic human nature, race, religion, basic human nature. When someone does not have anything, he will fight for everything. Does that make sense? As opposed to someone that has everything, chances are high he will fight for nothing. He will fight for nothing because he has everything. He believes he has everything. So remove every comfort zone, remove every comfort items from said individual, doesn't matter race or religion, he will progress, guarantee you. Because when you are not comfortable, when you are tak selesa, I guarantee you will mengejar ilmu, look for knowledge. You will have some sort of innovation, and then confirm you will take risks in your life. Mengejar ilmu, seeking for knowledge, innovation, and taking risks. These are the three basic ingredients, catalysts for growth, catalysts for progression. And these three catalysts is somewhat missing within our society. It's somewhat missing within our community, within our education system, within our environment. Mengejar ilmu, inovasi, and taking risk. And the weird part is when we talk about Islam in Malaysia, As much as I am a firm pejuang for Islam all the time, any day you call me to fight for Islam, I'm in the front line. But the first thing that we got as a Muslim was what? The very first thing as a Muslim, what was the first thing that we got? Iqra, read, bacalah. As that means in our DNA, and in our faith, in our ruh, in our soul, the very first thing that we got was being told to read. So even the most basics of basics within a Muslim, many of us fail on that respect. So how can we progress or have some sort of growth of intelligence when even the fundamental basics we fail at? When the system that we live in, that we grow up in, does not make us think openly, but makes us more boxed in. So these are things that I fight for, and I speak loudly about on my social media. And we should. I always challenge the status quo, but it's for the country. It's for the betterment of the ummah. Inshallah, that's my brief of what I went through and why we still pejuang for what we pejuang for. Inshallah.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. I think there are a lot of important things that you have mentioned just now. Number one, we need to look back at our system, to revamp our system in order to develop the cultural intelligence among people, especially students. Number two, the role of leaders to unite people and educate them in our society. And we need to integrate critical thinking into the exploration of culture. And number four, we need to move out from our comfort zone to seek knowledge and do innovation to grow. So Alhamdulillah, I think we have quite a number of questions that we have received. I think any of the panelists can answer that. To begin, I think question number one, what are the challenges that we are facing now in order to promote cultural intelligence? I think this is in line with what Ms. Rainey mentioned. Please, Ms. Rainey.
Thank you for the question, Dr. Azrul. Well, I think first and foremost, when it comes to learning and awareness, we have to learn from not just our present, but also from our past and our future. We have to look at the bigger picture of how we arrived here, right? And one of the biggest things from my own learning that I've come to realization is that the implications of colonialism is still very much infested in today's world, right? All the things, how the systems are working, the systems are not broken. The systems are built that way due to colonialism. So we have, as youth, we have to have this awareness to decolonize ourselves, to ask tough questions. You know, when for my own learning, why I do what I do and why I speak up is because I think of how my grandparents fought so hard for me to be here just to have a voice, and it's very wrongful of me to not use this voice. So the story, my short answer is that we have to always be mindful, and in our own learning, we have to reflect, use our reflective capabilities and also reflexive capabilities. Reflect on ourselves, on the things that we can do. We might not be able to change the system, but what can we do now, standing here right now? What sort of actions that we can take to implement that change, right? I mean, we can complain, day and night about how the system is, not perfect. It's very imperfect, yes. But also, how can we be that change so that we won't perpetuate the colonial ways of doing and thinking things again? So yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you very much. We have the second question. I think Madam can answer this question. What is your advice for us in educating the young people about culture and values?
Okay, my advice. Okay, first of all, I want to start with this: that nobody is born racist. Nobody is born racist, and this is also something which Caprice mentioned earlier in his point about being friends or going to school with a Jewish boy. I once spent 4 days on a train with a Jewish guy from Israel named Daniel, now the same name as me. And he was just like a normal guy. He spoke out against what his government are doing, what the Zionist government are doing. But he was just a normal guy. So it really, I'm a firm believer on we cannot stereotype against anybody whatsoever. And I think to progress, then we need to do that. We cannot just say that we can't just paint everybody with one paintbrush. When something happens, when one group does something, we cannot blame the whole group. This is what happened to us Muslims back in 9/11 or even before that. You know, a few bad eggs did something and they just tarnished the whole basket. So yeah, I'm a big fan on that. We cannot stereotype. We have to take every case as it comes. That's probably the best advice I can give, is not to stereotype. Just go at everything with an open mind, non-biased, open mind, and do not stereotype it in any case whatsoever.
Okay, thank you, madam. We go to the next question. I think Caprice can answer this. As a young man who are in the process of growing up, how did you manage to adjust to the different cultures you are exposed to and yet able to form your own value system and your own identity? Please, Caprice.
Oh, wow. That's a big question. Can you repeat that one more time? I think there's two parts to that question.
Okay.
Repeat that question one more time.
As a young man who are in the process of growing up, how did you manage to adjust to the different cultures you are exposed to and yet able to form your own value system and your own identity?
Okay, sure. I think one of the things that I do to myself is I constantly sit in a non-comfort zone. I'm always outside my comfort zone. Everything that we ever try to do, everything I ever try to do in life is getting outside my comfort zone. So I don't look at it as I just look at it as growing up, right? Or upgrading yourself, right? The same way that we every year we buy a brand new iPhone or buy a brand new phone, or every year there's a brand new upgraded phone. I believe every individual should really upgrade themselves, and the best way for you to do that is by pasang ilmu. Read, and pasang as much ilmu as you can, and that's gonna help you grow. And then it will help you form your own opinions. It will help you form your own view of the world or view of life. The more knowledge that you consume, the more that you're able to form your own way of thinking, right? If you only eat carrots your whole life, you're gonna think there's only carrots in the world, right? But if you think carrots, eat apples, you eat cabbage, then you know there's a plethora, a buffet of various amazing fruits and vegetables that you can consume, as opposed to if you always ate carrot your whole life and you assume only carrot is the best thing in the world, right? Because you only consume carrot. So I believe any individual should consume more knowledge, consume more information, consume more culture, consume more culture in order for you to really upgrade yourself from an iPhone 1 to iPhone 3, from iPhone 3 to iPhone 10, from iPhone 10 to iPhone 12. It's just upgrading your mindset, right? It's taking your brain to the gym. The same way if you go to the gym today and you work out your arm, the only thing that gets big is your arm. If you work out your arm every day at the gym, the only thing that gets big is your arm. Not this one, not your leg, not your finger, it's just your arm, right? So the best mental gym is giving knowledge to your brain. Read, bacalah, ikra, read. So that's how that's how I did it, and I think any individual could do it in a heartbeat.
What you try to mention is the key point is reading, right?
Reading, yeah.
Okay, the next question. Is an educational flag of cultural intelligence. Colonial masters create the stereotypes. Example, the myth of the lazy native to marginalize those opposed to them. Maybe Ms. Rainey to answer that question.
Thank you, Dr. Azrul. Yeah, that's the thing, you know, when there's a benchmark in culture, then stereotyping happens, which is why it's important to look inwardly to ourselves. We have to be confident with who we are in terms of our culture. We have to have this consistency of what our culture is, and having that holistic understanding, you know, the gesture framework that I shared, holistic understanding of who we are, that we look in all aspects that makes us human, right? So then if we have the confidence, if we have the depth of understanding of what our culture is and what other people's culture is, and then we'll be less inclined to fall into stereotyping, right? We'll practice open-mindedness, and we'll invite them into our culture and vice versa. And we'll also embrace their culture as well. So again, it has a lot to do with decolonizing the ways that we think, the ways that we view the world, and the ways that things have been put in place for us. Revamping the education system is definitely much needed. Has a long way to go in order of, you know, building up their confidence when it comes to claiming who they are whenever they are, you know, abroad. Whenever they live abroad, it's very easy for you to lose your identity. Say when you have lived in a different country for an X number of years, that's when you should hold on to your identity even more. And for myself, what I've done with my friends is invite them into my culture. I would, you know, and that also makes me closer to my culture, where I learn how to cook certain meals, where I share with them, you know, during Hari Raya, share the celebration with them, and not being concluded in Christmas, for example. So we trade and we share our values, we trade and share our practices, so that they have an understanding of who we are as a person, what our culture is. So in that sense, then we'll be able to help eliminate stereotyping in other people's mind as well as ours.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I think we have the last question. We go to Madam first, and then Caprice, you can comment something on that question. Okay. Living in the 21st century, our youth now are digital natives. How to practically change their attitude from gadget-centric to human-centric that focuses on cultural intelligence? We go to Madam first, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of youth now, there's like, I also do it when you see the phone ringing, you don't pick it up, but you WhatsApp, you message them. It's almost like we've made like a phobia of actually talking to people, having like human to human contact. And I don't think that the pandemic and being locked away, everybody in their own house is also helping with this issue. It's not good for mental health. And yeah, huge generation now, it's, you know, the whole thing of talking on the phone is just alien to the youth now. It's all about WhatsApp. It's all about direct messaging. There's no talking involved. So I can do it sometimes when I'm away from my family or whatever. I'm away for work. You can go like 3 or 4 days without actually talking to anybody. You can realize like I've been like 3 days since I've actually opened my mouth and said a single word, because everything is just everything is just so digitalized now. You don't actually have to talk anymore. And that I think is very, very negative and very bad for mental health. We need, from a young age, we need that kind of human connection to expand, expand our knowledge and to feed off of each other. You know, you can get a lot off of the internet, off of, you know, YouTube and all these best things that I've learned. Have been, you know, from other people, from human to human contact, from you know, from listening to and having debates with people and having conversations with people, sharing knowledge with people. Of course, you can get that online, but I think it's so important that you need to have these connections with you know, with other people, with your friends, with your family. So you do not become like socially awkward and just completely 100% within your technology and within your phone. And that I see, I mean, you know, for example, with my kids, I have a 3-year-old and a 7-month-old. And if I can, I never want to give them my phone to watch, anything on it, because I think it's so bad that I hate it when I see that. I mean, I know we barely give my 3-year-old the phone, but he already knows how to do this and knows how to scroll on YouTube. He's 3 years old. And compared to a lot of people, I barely give my phone or any kind of technology to them. But with only that small exposure to technology and to the digital world, he already, with his very young brain, knows how to do all these things. Yeah, you can say that that's where the world is going. We need to educate our children to be technologically, whatever the word is, whatever, adapt or whatever. But at 3 years old, to be able to be scrolling and doing all these things, I think it's not right. And kids should be out playing and learning and feeding off of other people. They shouldn't be just with their heads in a phone watching all these videos that are online. I think it's so bad for mental health. And we can see it now that, I mean, there probably is a study, I don't know, but I believe that there's a link between mental health and kids being exposed to phones and to all these, digital world at such a young age. I in my opinion, it's not by chance that these huge spikes in mental health came around about the time that technology started progressing. I remember back when the Nokia 3210 first came out, and there was the hands-free function, and there was this huge, in the UK, there was this huge big thing about how bad using the hands-free thing is for your brain, with the waves coming in and whatever. But now, and that wasn't Bluetooth, that wasn't Wi-Fi, that wasn't anything. That was just a wire going from the end of the phone into your earphone. And that's so bad, the waves, microwaves or whatever on your brain, that it's really, really bad and really, really bad for your mental health and can cause brain cancer and tumors and all these things. And now look at where we're going. Technology, now look at where it is. Everything is in here. But do we ever hear anything about how it's bad for our brain, it's bad for all these waves and whatever? So back when it was a Nokia 3210, back before the days of 3G, 4G, internet was still dial-up broadband, it was bad then. I don't think it's got any better now, but it's just we're not being told about it now. So yeah, in short, that's my opinion. That's my 2 cents on the matter. Yeah, of course we need the digital world, but we cannot be like, completely unable to communicate and to be socially, we can't afford to be socially awkward or socially unprepared in this day and age. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you, Madan. Yeah, Kapis, your take on this?
I think to address that question effectively, we have to separate technology, advancement of technology with human values, and address it differently. I believe human values, whether it's cultural values or any values, should be instilled by parents, by communities, and only then do we hope that the kids that grow up will use technology in a very effective manner. If we don't instill good values in the beginning of a kid's life, then by the time he or she has a handphone or has a tablet, he's going to do whatever he wants to. If you don't instill a value of knowledge within a kid, all day long, he might just do TikTok. He might just dance TikTok the whole day, because that's the only thing that excites him. But if we instill values of knowledge or whatever values that you want in a kid early on, by the time he or she has a tablet or a handphone, he or she might read more, because you can actually read more from the handphone. You can get more information. He or she might look for interesting knowledge about different cultures. He or she might might Google more things about world knowledge, as opposed to simply shopping and playing TikTok. You know what I mean? So I believe technology is a tool for the advancement of humans, only if humans want to. Does that make sense? And so if you have a human that just wants to enjoy because he was brought up with very, very little instilling of knowledge or good values, then he's just going to use this as a way to play games, shopping, and TikTok. But if you instill good values in someone, or critical thinking kids at till the age of 8, 9, 10, by the time he's 15, 16, 17, he or she will use this platform, which is very, very empowering, to do crazy things. So that's how I would approach that question. Separate the two issues. Technological advancement and human advancement is two different roads. Technological advancement can be very fast. Every year is very quick, but the advancement of a human is really dependent on the first few values that you instill in the person. It's like when you cook food, the first few ingredients that you mix on a dish plays a big role of how it's going to taste by the time it reaches your plate and you're about to consume it. So that's my take. How we should view technology with human nature.
Okay, thank you, Caprice.
You're
I think, yeah, Madan, you want to add something? No.
No, I just saw there's one more that's just come on. Bill Gates' son was given devices at the age of 14. Surprised. Personally, no, I'm not surprised. I think I was allowed to have my own phone at the age of, I think around that, maybe 12, 13. And Bill Gates is probably around about the same age as my parents, so meaning his children are probably around the same age as me. So around my generation, that was around the age that we were getting phones, that I was allowed to have a phone. But then that was very strict rules. I couldn't take it to school. Could only have it after school. And anyway, there was nothing to do on it anyway. It had an aerial, it had a flip down thing. There was, I think maybe Snake was the game on it, probably. There was certainly not the technology that we have today, and not the connectiveness that we have today. I think that's the worrying thing for me is, 10, 12, 30, even younger than that, they're already on social media, they're dancing on TikTok, and that's for the whole world to see. So although there are kind of parental child locks that you can put on all these things, kids are very clever and they have ways around doing all these things. But am I surprised Bill Gates' son was given a device at the age of 14? If that is true, I'm not really surprised. He knows probably more than anyone, the benefits and also the negatives of having such technology at such a young age. But yeah, that was around the same age that was given to me, and I think that was my parents' generation and my generation. That was the kind of the norm at that time. So yeah, that's my.
I think we have last question, Madan, for you.
Okay.
When you assimilated into the Malay culture, are you still the Madan before you came here? Are there any culture substitutions happen, or you are a cultural hybrid of then and now?
Of course, there are still bits. Madan obviously was a name that was given to me, and a name that I got after being in Malaysia for a couple of years. So obviously, my original name is Daniel. So obviously, the Daniel of 16, 17, 18 years old back in England compared to the Madan now is obviously a very completely different guy. But I think that would have been the case anyway, even if I would have stayed in the UK. Me at 15, 16, 17 years old would be different to me at now 30. But yeah, there probably are a few things that have been left behind. My kind of English habits, maybe that maybe have left a little bit of residue behind and leaked into who Madan is. But yeah, I don't imagine that if I was still in the UK, I would be who I am today. But then, that just goes to show that whatever we kind of plan and whatever the route which we think we are going to take, if he has a different route for us, a different idea for us, we're going to follow, like it or not, we're going to follow his plan. But yeah, I bersyukur beyond words that I found Malaysia when I did. I could have gone down a very different path. I was probably very close to going down a very different and not a very good path. Luckily, I think was divine intervention right there, that I found Malaysia when I did. otherwise, yeah, my life could have been very, very different. I've been so lucky over the years to always have support from, friends, family, that have, even when I've said to my parents, my family, this was back in like 2011, 2012, I want to come home. Although my parents they would love for me to have gone home, but they've always said to me, like, we know who you are when you're back home, and we see you what you like when you're out in Malaysia. You are a better person when you're in Malaysia than you are back home. They worry. My mother said that I think she even said it in one of the TV programs which we interviewed her. She worries less about me when I'm half the world away than she worried about me when I was back in England. So although it's hard for them, especially over the lockdown, it's hard for them not to be able to see me. Alhamdulillah for technology. We have video calls, so I can call them, every day over the lockdown. They can see their grandchildren and whatever. So although it's very hard for them, but that's why I will always respect them, that when I said, I want to come home, they kind of made me not think so rationally, sit down and think about it. And yeah, they were right. The next day, actually, what am I talking about? This is where I need to be. So yeah, there are bits left behind. I like to think I pick and choose, the best bits of my English heritage and then Malaysian culture, and I kind of amalgamated them into the Makdan that you see today. So Alhamdulillah. Terima kasih. Thank you.
Madan, there is one request. Can you give advice to our youth in Terengganu dialect?
In Terengganu dialect, nak cakap anda. Nanti ubit dah. Nak cakap anda, okey, kepada set muda di Terengganu, masa depan kita atas kepala kita. Mana jangan buat benda-benda tak baik, buat benda-benda bagus. InsyaAllah kita boleh cipta satu budaya, satu masyarakat yang bertanggungjawab dan bijak sangat. Bagai bawah.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know what to say. So yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Ms. Reni, your last word before we end our session today.
I just want to say thank you. Terima kasih for having me here and for listening to me. And I hope that, us youth would do lots of reflections on where we are, where we come from, where our ancestors come from, and how we arrived here today. And always mindful of the things that we do, how we behave, and not to be inferior by our culture just because the dominant culture is the Western culture. I think that's very important. We should be proud of where we stand today, of the things that we practices. Even dengan bahasa yang kita cakap pun, kita kena berbangga, because in languages adalah ilmu. And once you lose that language, you lose a whole set of ilmu, of worldviews on how you see things as well. So again, thank you for the organizers for this very fruitful and I think successful event. I've been participating, yesterday and today, and I'm glad that I was able to share my 2 cents with everyone here. Thank you.
Thank you, Reni. Caprice, your last word?
Sure. I want to say thank you to UIA and all the panelists for joining the session. Had a lot of good insights, and inshallah, we can keep in touch. Thank you.
Okay. Madan?
Yeah, again, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Like I said earlier on, I kind of feel like somewhat unqualified to be here, surrounded by all these great panelists and great voices. Yeah, thank you to UIM for inviting me. And yeah, remember me when you have the next international webinar. I would love to join, be happy to join. So thanks a lot. Terima kasih. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much again to all the panelists. I think most of the questions that have been posted have been asked in this particular session. And once again, I'm very grateful. Thank you, Ms. Reni. Thank you, Makdan, and thank you, Caprice, for your insights. On that note, thank you very much, and Assalamualaikum. I pass the baton back to Mr. Ziad.
Thank you so much, dear panelists, for sharing your interesting experience and wonderful stories. And thank you so much, Dr. Azrul, for moderating this wonderful session. My name is Ziad Beydoun from Syria. It was my pleasure to be the MC for this session, actually. And once again, thank you very much, dear participants and viewers, wherever you are. And please stay safe, everyone. So over to you, Sister Shahrizad.
Thank you, Ziad, online live with us from Syria. It is early morning in Syria right now, right, Ziad? And while we are about to have our lunch, and you please take care and enjoy your big breakfast afterwards. Yeah, so stay safe, Ziad. And ladies and gentlemen, let us now move on to our next session. Standby online now is Professor Datuk Dr. Husaini Omar, the Director General, Ministry of Higher Education, Malaysia. Datuk Dr. Husaini will present to all of us the resolution of the international webinar, Cultural Intelligence Towards Promoting Institutional Excellence. Over to you, Datuk.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Yang berbahagia Emeritus Profesor Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector IUM Malaysia, respected speakers and all the participants for this international webinar on cultural intelligence towards promoting institutional excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm on behalf of the Director General, Dr. Husaini Omar. I'm the Deputy Director General, Rubiah Yunus. So from the Department of Higher Education Malaysia. So I'm honored to be here today on behalf of the Ministry of Education to share with you some of the resolution from the 2-day seminar. Including the one that we have just listened from very inspiring youth. So from these 5 forums that we have listened so far, I have actually with me today a few resolutions. So we've heard from forum number 1, speakers were talking about the role of higher education institutional leaders in promoting institutional excellence through cultural intelligence. So as we all know, higher education institutions are the centers where people of similar and different background converge for higher purpose of education, getting higher education. Their interaction create achievable output and outcomes institutionally to further sensitize our role towards cultural literacy. Through culture, which is not foreign in our landscape, the conceptualization of cultural intelligence, or CI, at the institutional level can be more explicitly exercised to fill in the gap and solve issues related to similarities as well as differences for better cultural dialogue and understanding. So to strive as excellent institution, our leaders must first culturally intelligent and make the CQ or the CI as an ongoing agenda to reform and redefine the strategic direction for human talent and development as well as academic activities. By doing so, the HEI are the focal point of societal transformation and lead global society to be holistically intelligent, as CQ is a multi-dimensions that ties all the other conventional intelligences. It is timely for all our leaders from higher education to perform cultural mapping at the institutional level through the understanding of the 4 CQ skills, which are drive, knowledge, strategy and action, and initiate this skill as renewed norm in the current society. From forum number 2, they talk about cultural intelligence and sustainability, which is regarded as the future of education. So the future and success of education depends on the HEI direction towards peace and harmony. Yeah? Cultural intelligence or CQ is a model that we should adopt in order to ensure good relationship between people in the institution who are essentially the key to peace and harmony. We talk about sustainability, which is a holistic concept in terms of balancing between human and environment. Although sustainability could be defined in many ways, balance is a key component in shared human heritage that goes beyond various cultures globally. It must be based on the values framework. Yeah, we heard a lot about values this morning among the youth speakers. Yeah, should be the framework that culturally related to the content available or proposed in Falsafah Pendidikan Kebangsaan or FPK or the UNESCO 4 pillars. CQ, yeah, simply means the ability to understand others, yeah, from different cultures. But some CQ misconceptions include, we thought that international experience that all of us have equal to CQ. The technical competency that we have equal to success, as well as the high EQ or emotional quotient equal to high CQ. Yeah, so those are among the misconceptions that we are having now. So one of the best way to instill CQ in the institution is through experiential learning, as one may read as much as he wants, but nothing beats being there, yeah? Being there, experiencing the moment. Therefore, we should consider imparting a sense of humility among us, yeah, among the community members, and focusing on strategies to unlearn things. Forum number 3 talk about effective communication, the importance of having effective communication through cultural intelligence or CQ. So COVID-19 has greatly affected us, yeah, how we live and how we communicate, which has taught the leaders among the HEI to survive without compromising the quality of education. Yeah? Effective communication starts with the language, which is best delivered through the openness in learning the culture of oneself and others. Amid the crisis from the current pandemic, the higher education community should rethink the right communication strategies in order to be effective, yeah? Especially when most processes are conducted virtually, as what we are having today. Yeah? CQ uncovers the aspect of understanding others, not just culturally, but emotionally, and more importantly, spiritually. Peoples with high CQ level demonstrate care, responsiveness, and flexibility towards similarities as well as differences, and which is the foundation for effective communication. CQ is important for communication effectiveness because it reflects the ability to deal with people from various backgrounds. Yeah? With CQ competency, it prepares us for better verbal and non-verbal communication at the international level. The use of readily available, culturally related material should further enhance effective communication through CQ. Forum number 4 yesterday, yeah, in the afternoon, talk about cultural intelligence and how it affects global citizenship. Yeah? Cultural diversity takes place not only geographically, but within society. Yeah? Because living in a multiracial society, yeah, we are experiencing that. Therefore, how human societies adapt to local environment and resources to create cultural distinctive build environment, social lifestyle, and livelihood. So culture is an adaptive force, and people constantly change from time to time. Value creating global citizenship education is a very important institutional strategy to harmonize the ongoing cultural changes. The best way to foster global citizenship, as it is happening in IUM, is through reflective dialogue and transformative learning, conducting community engagement activities such as cultural mapping is the way forward for effective cultural interaction, which will create wisdom, courage, and compassion. Higher education institutions leaders should soldier on more community-based initiative to achieve a high level of cultural intelligence institutionally. For the last session this morning, Forum 5, we heard how the importance of youth, interaction with youth to actually promote cultural intelligence, and the importance of having fundamental values instilled in not only for our children, but of course the youth. So with that, I end my talk about the resolution from the 2 days event, and I would like to congratulate Professor Tan Sri Dr. Zulkifli, and also the organizing committee IUM, and also ACAP for having or organizing this webinar, which is I believe is important to foster more this interaction between global leaders in this important topic of cultural intelligence. With that, Tan Sri, thank you very much for inviting Ministry of Education, especially the Department of Higher Education, to share with you some of the resolution from this today event. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Robiah, for sharing the resolution with us all. I would like to apologize for the address just now. Luckily, our participants didn't leave the Zoom platform for having, terkejut when they have shocked. I announced Dato' Husaini, but suddenly you turn to be on the.
It's all right. It's okay.
I really apologize for that one.
No problem.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Prof. Dato' Robiah Yunus is the Deputy Director General of Higher Education, Academic and Development MOHE. Yes, so thank you very much once again, Prof. We are actually going to the end of the ceremony, which is the official closing speech from our president, from IIM president. But while waiting for the closing ceremony, we would like to invite, is Dr. Yazrina on the platform? Is Dr. Yazrina online? So we'd like to invite Dr. Yazrina. All right, Alhamdulillah. We would like to invite Dr. Yazrina to share with us maybe your additional notes and insights on what we have discussed since yesterday up to the final forum that represent the youth just now. Over to you, Dr. Yaz.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear me, Madam Sharizat?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Okay, good. All right. Now, this is a very impromptu call, basically, although I did make some notes based on what I have listened. Now, what I can conclude for the last 2 days, it has been a very good discussion. We've covered a lot on the cultural intelligence, right? And of course, on how we can build a better global citizen. Now, based on what has been spoken, it's not only merely targeted for the higher education, but also from what we listened this morning from the youth, that it requires the whole ecosystem that we need to look into, particularly from parenting, from children who goes to school up to their secondary, and then when they go to higher education, and at the end of the day, when they graduated. So all this ecosystem plays very important role in order for us to embark in the journey of implementing or putting CQ cultural intelligence into the curriculum. So it is not only the responsibility of the, what I would say, higher education, but it's the responsibility of the community as well. that we need to look into into detail how we can go on about this. Now, we've listened to the first forum, the first day, where we looked into what had happened in Kamloops, and obviously we do not want our younger or the future generations to turn out, despite that this country, Canada or Australia or any other Europeans, are very well diverse. Right, and Malaysia in the first place, very well diversity, but as what we have listened to what the youth has been saying, there is a tiny demarcation line. There is some tension there that needs to be resolved. So this is what I can conclude from what the experience of the speakers is for you or every single person. It starts off with a single person, with you yourself, that you need to look at your insights, your inner belief, and talk to yourself. In other words, in Islamic version, what we call muhasabah diri. Okay, and look at the people around you, trying to understand, you know, their own culture. When they speak of such thing, what do they mean? But not to embark into assumptions. So that's the most important thing that we need to actually look into, that we need to inculcate with the young ones. So at the end of the day, I believe that the forum has set a pathway for us to look now the importance of cultural intelligence and how we can impart that into the leaders, all right, leaders of higher education, because at the end of the day, the leaders, the teachers, those people who are going to educate, or in fact, the leaders doesn't mean the vice chancellor, the rector. It can be the academics or even the parent. You are leaders of your own family. How we can inculcate that in everyone so that we can live in a harmonious life, so that we'll be able to understand more, so that we can resolve more issues, you know, that's currently happening today. So that is all that I can say. Thank you very much, Madam Sharizat. And of course, thank you to all the panelists. It has indeed been very, I would say, a deep discussion and a very good insights for us to move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yas. Always being there when we need you. All right.
I'm surprised. Okay, luckily, it was impromptu, basically.
Okay. Okay. Now, still, yeah, we are still waiting for a president to knock our door and enter the enter our room. But it seems that something, I think, well, since we are since we are still waiting for the president, but obviously there is no roadblock, because we are online. But I think the Secretariat is now giving me the signal to take a break. I would say we are going to take 5. But let's say if it is, prolonged to 10, I hope that the participants will still stay with us, because well, we should listen to what the president, the president take on the CQ, on the CQ issue, inshallah. Yes,
Madam Sharizat, if I may say something, right?
Please.
Probably while the participants, if they want to take a break and have their coffee, because it's online, so literally you can just have your bottle of water. If you do have any questions, and some of the speakers, I think, or the panelists may be around, that we can actually have a quick discussion if they do have any other thing that they want to ask to.
Oh yeah, I think the Secretariat is giving me the signal. Yeah, thumbs up. Yes, anyone. I mean, any panelists that are still, or even the moderators. I can see the moderators as well, who is online now, or who are online now. You are invited, or you may just turn on your speaker, unmute your speaker, and maybe share with us your thoughts on CQ. Anyone? Or I can always, call out your names, but
call out the name.
Boleh, tapi not my former bosses, of course. Okay. Dr. Asma is on the line. Even Dr. Wendy is also on the line, but the secretariat is giving me the mandate to call Dr. Asma. Is Dr. Asma? Dr. Asma, are you there?
Assalamualaikum.
Alhamdulillah. Yes, please, doctor. Take your time.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. I really must.
Can we have your video on?
I'm afraid not.
Okay, we understand that. Yeah, we understand that. It's lunch hour now.
Sorry. I've been on 2 webinars this morning. One is on education by Sekar Institute. So it's also quite fascinating there. But I have to congratulate the university and the team for putting this program together, because I find that the time has come for us to talk about cultural literacy. And I think based on my own experience, when you talk, when a client, this is based on my experience, when calls me for a cultural program, it's always because something has happened in the organization. So as a result, the program is really a trigger. Whereas I guess in the case of UIIM, it's also part of your vision. So I really must salute you to look at this particular field of studies as we go global. And also, I think, was it one of the speakers this morning was talking about the fact that we are functioning on the virtual platform. It is more important that we make our presence felt, and I think having a dose of cultural intelligence hopefully will help make us become part of the global citizen. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Asma. Thank you very much. Well, despite being called impromptu, but still we appreciate that very much. Inshallah, make dua that our team could go further to establish or to promote the CQ and the HEIs, inshallah. And online now, in fact, in the screen, ready is our friend, Associate Professor Dr. Wendy. So, yes, anything from you? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Harizat. I think first and foremost, I really want to take this opportunity to thank ACAP, Dr. Yas, and of course to IIUM, to Tan Sri Zul. I mean, this is such a phenomenal seminar, given the fact that, with this COVID and with, everybody is talking about industrial revolution, everybody is talking about how do we get our graduates to be employed, So I think it's really a seminar for us to pause, to really think again. What is the true purpose of education, really, really? And I think I would like to take this opportunity to really once again reiterate the importance of, when we study, when we do education, do we also learn how to live together? And I think we shouldn't think education is something separated, from our daily lives. Education is part and parcel of our daily lives. And when we talk about part and parcel of our daily lives, we talk about, every individual, we talk about human beings and what makes a human being, and a human being is just not a physical body by itself. A human being consists of values, consists of culture, consists of conscience, consists of belief system, consists of so many things, right? So how do we then, put all these things together? We have the cognitive, we have the head, we have the heart, we have the mind, we have the physical. So how do we put all these things together, and then to relook into really the purpose of education? So I think not many institutions of higher learning or even not many education systems are actually talking about the importance of cultural intelligence. And we are not talking about the importance of value creation. So how do we create values? I mean, we are bound to face with a lot of challenges and difficulties. I mean, this is part and parcel of life. But the challenge is, how do we use, the God-gifted capacity that we have as a human being? How do we use them to create values, right? So I think these are some of the things that's really, the missing puzzle in our education. So I guess this is really, really a wonderful forum when we talk about cultural intelligence. How do we, put into look into the alternative perspective, the alternative ways of thinking, not just one stream or one particular thought, but we need to also embrace the very often neglected values or cultures, even those belong to the minority or the indigenous. Those are rich with cultures and values and wisdom, which we often forget. So I hope through this platform, for all, is really a great opportunity for us to once again pause, to think, to rethink, to learn, and to relearn. Thank you so much.
Okay, we are still waiting for the president, but as I mentioned, okay. Is he?
Yeah, I see the president online.
Okay. So I was about to ask the secretariat. I hope that we can call the PDRM and ask them to stop or to release all the roadblocks. Anyways, Dato', how are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right. So let me just proceed to what we need to do here, Dato'. Okay. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of our two-day seminar. Alhamdulillah, we have our president with us, and as you are all aware that we are on the platform of the international webinar, Cultural Intelligence Towards Promoting Institutional Excellence, from yesterday, 14th of June, until today, 15th of June, 2021. And ladies and gentlemen, this webinar will be closed with a speech from Honorable Datuk Dr. Muhammad Daud Bakar, the President of IIUM. Datuk, the platform is now yours.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihi al-amin Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thank you, Madam MC, Madam Shahrizad, yang berbahagia, Profesor Datuk Dr. Hussaini Umar, Director General, Minister of Higher Education Malaysia, Honorable Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak, Rector of the International Islamic University Malaysia, honorable guests, distinguished and learned speakers and moderators, participants, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon. First and foremost, we thank Allah, the Almighty, for His mercy and blessing that we are able to meet online today, and we are able to attend and participate in this auspicious event. Before I proceed further, on behalf of the organizers and the participants, we have all the pleasure to put or record our appreciation, our gratitude, our sembah kasih kepada and to our Queen, Her Majesty Sri Paduka Baginda Raja Pengurusi Agong, for delivering her royal speech yesterday, which was so insightful, powerful, and enlightening on many dimensions. Menjunjung kasih Tuanku. I would like also to thank Professor Emeritus Tan Sri Datuk Zulkifli Abdul Razak, the Rector of the International Islamic University Malaysia, and the Akademi Kepimpinan Pendidikan Tinggi AKEP for their kind invitation for me to speak in this closing remark. I'm also profoundly grateful to AKEP for the trust and support they place in IIUM in shaping minds of our future higher education institution leaders. I have not been able to follow the whole presentation of this webinar, which took place since yesterday, but I was able to participate in the first session, which brought together on the main stage 3 prominent speakers, and I have been able to grasp not much, but a little but informative, a little but significant knowledge of the topic of the webinar, the cultural intelligence towards promoting institutional excellence. So I was so happy to see that we have brought the discussion of this topic and similar topic to the higher level and to the center stage among the academicians, particularly the academic administrators. It is apparent to me that this kind of thematic discussion would have surely broadened our mindset and our bandwidth to understand each and every topic which is related, which is connected and wired to our ecosystem. The understanding of the ecosystem might be lacking in our own community due to many reasons, which are, some of them are conceivable, some of them are not conceivable and understandable. But this kind of webinar, in short, in brief, from my perspective as an observer and not as the specialist and expert, has opened up my mind as a person, and of course has opened up the mind of so many participants who have been following all the session, thoroughly and inquisitively, I'm sure in the past 2 days or so. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia consists of multiple race and ethnicities. Additionally, one of the government agendas is to become a globally connected higher education player with its international education hub status. Therefore, knowledge on cultural intelligence, or CQ, is pertinent to academics, administrators, especially policymakers, in order to cope with and navigate the diverse higher education community with great wisdom and practicality. ACAP, from my humble opinion, should play a major role in making CQ as institution, as it oversees the higher education institution directly. The very fact that the arrival of international students to Malaysian shore for education indicate a great acknowledgement of global citizens towards our educational institutes and initiatives. This recognition should empower our efforts in improving the higher education institution in Malaysia, and this can be done through the internalization of CQ, training of staff and educators, as well as the establishment of curriculum to be implemented as compulsory courses in students' study program can be mobilized to realize this aim in the near and far future. I don't intend to give a very long speech, as I'm sure you have been enlightened from all the dimension perspective. I would rather make my speech brief and short and sweet if I could. I can show you the speech will be brief, but I'm not so sure whether the speech can be sweet at the end of the day. Respected participant, IUM will continue to be a major role player for CQ in higher education institution and leading the way in this effort. IUM will be the institution that will display a good example, or rather exemplar, towards other higher education institutions in internalizing CQ as part of the university's agenda and identity. Given the international nature of this university, I'm sure there's a lot for others to take from IUM approach to implement cultural intelligence within one's university. We are not the perfect one as we speak, but we always strive and strike towards perfection. If I may give my own footnote to the whole theme of the discussion in this webinar, as much as we would like to understand, internalize, and promote the cultural intelligence I would appeal to my colleagues among the researchers, speakers, and intelligentsia in this great beloved nation and country, and your own respective countries, wherever you are. We need to always bring in the dimension of the cognitive intelligence, because cognitive will give the meanings, and the insights perhaps will give the right meaning, the right insight for everything we do or plan to do. The cultural dimension is only one aspect of the cognitive meanings of speeches, of culture, laws, regulation, policies, even the textbook, even the lecture note we are sharing and delivering, and even the speeches of great professors of the world. There are elements of the cognitive intelligence that we need to train ourselves, to train our lecturers and our students. And as someone coming from big data analytic world, I can see that the cognitive understanding or intelligence, for that matter, has not been given the proper attention, and many of our issues politically, socially, economically, and in fact culturally can be resolved and can be at least understood better from the cognitive understanding and appreciation. The cognitive understanding of the culture and the speeches, the behavior, and the text of our curriculum and our lecture note can open up so many dimensions. What more? Again, from I could be biased, from my own world of big data analytics and AI, it can give the timely and the trendy and the most contextual understanding of each and every team which are passing through or coming through on our career and profession, by putting the right data to support the meaning of anything we talk about, be it the issue of exclusivity, the issue of superiority or inferiority, the issue of cultural gap and cultural mismatch. Everything should be interpreted using the cognitive supported by the big data of our knowledge, our experience, our behavior for the last how many not only decade but centuries. So this is something I would like to really appeal to everyone to bring along with you from this seminar, the importance of cultural intelligence supported and perhaps coupled with the cognitive dimension of the cultural intelligence supported by the big data, both structured and unstructured data in the society. Finally, I wish to express my heartfelt gratitude again to the management of ACAP, the speakers. We are forever indebted to your high-level ideas and insights that you have impressed all the audience and participants. Of course, the same goes to the panelists and moderators, the hardworking members of the Secretariat, the repertoires, and not forgetting the Director, Office for Strategy and Institutional Change, Dr. Muhammad Faris Abdullah, for his ever-willing commitment and support, and all university officials who have contributed in their own respective ways. My thanks to all participants from all corners of the world, quoting what was highlighted by Her Majesty during the opening session on empathy and respect. The world needs value-based education, and this webinar had been fruitful and beneficial to all as part of our initiative in achieving our objective towards education with soul for the betterment of our generation. Let us learn together to acquire empathy, trust, and respect. Let us conceive, believe, and achieve every aspect and the essence of empathy, trust, and respect. Thank you. I wish everyone a very meaningful and successful webinar, and have a good day, a good week moving forward, and stay safe. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Datuk. On behalf of the organizer, we'd like to express our utmost gratitude and appreciation also to all guests of honor for gracing this event with their virtual presence. We would also like to record our special appreciation to Her Majesty Sri Paduka Baginda, the Raja Pemaisuri Agung, Tunku Hajah Aziza Aminah Maimunah Iskandariah, binti Almarhum Al-Mutawakkil Allah Sultan Iskandar Al-Haj, the constitutional head of IIUM, for her willingness to virtually officiate this event. Our gratitude also goes to the honored panelists and moderators, as well as the organizing committee members, the ITD team of IIM, OSIC staff members, KCA and Rector's Office, and all personnel involved directly and indirectly in making this webinar a reality. Finally, we would also like to sincerely thank all the participants of this webinar. We hope you have not only benefited from this webinar, but shall make a significant contribution in practicing cultural intelligence, CQ, towards promoting institutional excellence. We have a lot of work to do, ladies and gentlemen, after this, but I am confident that together we will be able to materialize the resolution in the context of CQ in HEI. We apologize for any shortcomings and hope to see you again in the future programs. Thank you once again, Datuk President. And before we leave the platform, please kindly turn on your camera for the final virtual photo shoot. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and inshallah we'll meet again. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Okay, now I am asked to count, for the photo shoot. So everyone get ready. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
No freestyle.
Okay.